is a presentation of Sertoba Media and Comey Media, Incorporated.
The NFL finds the Atlanta Falcons and defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich following prank call to Shedeur Sanders during the NFL draft. Did the league make a correct series of punishments here? Henry Ruggs III training in prison for second chance in NFL. Is this a realistic goal for him to achieve? Ex-NFL star Steve Smith Sr. sued under Homewrecker law. Will his poor choice and bumping uglies of a partner affect his pro football legacy? And we've got a mother, father, and beard on your electronic screen. All of that and more on this edition of Total Football Talk. Welcome, one and all. It's that time again. We're back for Total Football Talk, episode 82. I am your main host for today's program, Drew Willingham, as we are live for episode 82 right now. Cole is enjoying birthday week on the road and doing things for his main employer, but I am here to bring you some wild action that we have had that mainly also includes busted for bumping uglies unethically. Steve Smith Sr. We got some things to talk about with that. We got some UFL action. We got much more in store, but our guy Dante Hill is in the house saying, what's up, guys? Well, what's up, my man? I know you had an interesting NFL draft this year as well. We got some things to discuss within that here for the opening drive. It's going to be a two-parter because we've got the UFL news, we got the draft news, we got Steve Smith Sr., we've got the prank call for Jeff Ulbrich's son, allegedly, to Shedeur Sanders. We got a whole lot of things to discuss, and Henry Ruggs III, somebody who we haven't seen on the football field in quite some time, and deservingly so, but we got things to talk about within that and the latest on today's episode 82 program. But thank you to Dante. Thank you to the others who are tuning in now and who will tune in throughout the next couple hours of this program. And to those of you watching this syndicated. We even are going to talk about the one and only basketball player that you guys label as
Okay.
I have found a way to talk about that man today. We're going to talk about him here in a little bit, but not right now. Going forward, we got plenty of things to discuss, and we're going to start it out here in the opening drive.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989. On two. Ready? Break.
Here with the opening drive. Like we said before, we got 4 games to review from this past week. And we're going to start it off with the Friday night game. And this game was pretty interesting. This was between two teams that one of them should have deservingly lost because they came into this game 0-4 last Friday night in this Week 5 contest. The Showboats were 0-4, and the Birmingham Stallions, who came to this 3-1, they've won back-to-back pro football championships, the first 2 USFL championship and last year's inaugural UFL championship. This team came into the season hot and didn't start it off hot because they came into this one with one big, fat, stinking. And with that big old L, they carried a lot of momentum of going downward, but then they got a win last week. Coming into this one, the Showboats 0-4 have looked like an absolute dumpster Pelican team for quite some time. And when you really look at what this team has been through from start to finish, well, I finished at this point, they've been pretty bad. And 0-4 into this one's pretty bad. You know, the Stallions got a win back last week, winning 23-16 over the Roughnecks coming into this one. But the Showboats going into week 5 again, 0-4. This game went into overtime, ladies and gentlemen. Overtime. Yes, I'm going to take myself back on the screen just to let you know again. Overtime. Let's break it down how it went into overtime. You know, the first quarter, there wasn't really much action. There was a punt here, a punt there between the first two drives, the Showboats and the Stallions, giving it back and forth to one another, going 3 and out on the first two drives. Then the Memphis Showboats would get things started. They had a backup quarterback in for this game, Dresser Wynn, because we have talked plenty of the quarterback that was there the first 4 weeks. He was an absolute leader of the pack when it comes to these right here, the dumpster Pelicans. He was number 1 for the largest big mother, father, and dumpster Pelican on this list. And they sat him down after 4 terrible games. He's so bad, we're not even going to bring up his name. But what they did bring in was a guy named Dresser Wynn, a cool first name, an even cooler last name when you put the two together, and actually did some damage out there on that field, because in his second drive on the day, again, they did have the 3 and out the first time, then the Stallions had the 3 and out, then the Showboats get it back, and on 3 plays, they go 83 yards for a mother, father, and touchdown in 1 minute and 4 seconds. One of the quickest drives of the UFL season, because we've had some slow drives. These games have been slow. They've been ugly. It's been almost nap-worthy, like you're watching the senior PGA Tour from 1997, and you just want to take a big old snooze in the middle of the afternoon. That's what it felt like, watching this game. Well, not this one, but the others leading up to it, especially if they showcase the Showboats. In this one in particular, they finally got things turned around in Game 5, because on a step-to-step pass, the first one was incomplete from Wynn into that drive, but they got things going when good old Jackson rushed to the left for 5 yards, which set up a deep right pass for 78 yards to good old D. Anderson for 78 yards on a 3rd and 5 to take this lead at 6-0. Now, they would go for the extra point, and they would make it on a 2-point conversion. This team would be up 8-0 after their first drive. Stallions would punt again. Back-to-back drives, the first 2 drives, they would punt, give it back to the Showboats, and the Showboats would get a field goal. We'd be up 11-0 at the end of the first quarter. Into the second quarter, the Stallions would finally answer to the Showboats and get it on the board with the field goal. With 4 minutes and 27 seconds remaining in the second quarter, they would finally get on the mother-fathering board. The Showboats would punt, the Stallions would punt, and the Showboats would punt again, leading up to a missed field goal towards the end of the second quarter. The Stallions would be down 17-3 at the point of the end of the first half. Now, you got to ask yourself, when you have punts here and you have punts there, you're thinking to yourself, when you're clicking through here, how in the expletive did they get those 6 points? I'll tell you how. Field goals. They slid in a field goal here, and they slid in one there. They got you those 6 points. You go up 17-3 at halftime. A little bit of wordplay mess with just to make sure you're still hanging tough with this, ladies and gentlemen. 17-3 going into halftime. And you're thinking to yourself, if you're watching these games, the Showboats are absolutely terrible. They're 0-4 coming into this game. They couldn't muster up much on offense because their offensive line hasn't been able to protect their quarterback. They're bringing a backup quarterback. Apparently they like this guy because they start blocking for him, and that's how Dresser Wynn looks like an NFL quarterback in this game. Because by the end of this game, Dresser Wynn would have a total, and I mean total, when it comes to 235 passing yards, 8.1 average per play, which is almost a first down every time you sling the rock, because it's 10 yards for a first down. So literally every time you're slinging the rock, you're getting the first down, it seems like. You go up 1 touchdown to 0 interceptions. When you have a name like Dresser Wynn, of course you should be throwing like this. You should not be turning the ball over, and especially having a QBR of almost 100 with 96.2. This guy was looking great. 17 to 29 average. I mean, I say great, and you're like, Drew, what in the expletive are you talking about? These are not great NFL statistics. No. What it is great leadership, because you're not really turning the ball over. You're completing over half of your passes. 58.6% of your passes are completed. You're moving this ball down the field. You've got a running game that's actually getting some yards, because they could not run the ball in the first 4 weeks. I don't know what was going on with their offensive line to finally decide to block, but they were, because good old Prince, the running back, had 12 carries on the day. They could barely get 8 collectively, it felt like. And he had nearly 60 yards, 59 yards on 12 carries, 4.9 yards per carry, had a long of 17. So collectively, he did pretty good, I would say. He was getting the ball moving. Even Dresser Wynn ran 4 times for 11 yards. That's not a whole lot, but that's your quarterback still being active back there and still extending the drive with his legs. That's what you want to see. You were not getting that in the first 4 weeks with the shameful quarterback. The shameful quarterback that we are not going to sit here and go too much in depth about, because he let us down. Not us. I mean, because I'm not a fan of the Showboats. But if you actually are just a fan of football and like watching positive play, you were not getting that the first 4 weeks. And I mean, I guess I'll drop the hammer here and drop his name. Is EJ Perry, if you guys haven't watched the past few weeks of episodes, who's been playing for the Showboats the first 4 weeks. And Cole and I both were sitting up here each and every week talking about how bad this offense looked with him under center. And something had to give, and there had to be a change. But who were you going to go to? Because it's not like the backups are highly touted in the UFL. Like, you hear about them a lot. You know, a lot of these players didn't even make it to the NFL. Undrafted free agents that were on a lot of practice squads, but you never really saw on TV unless you're really paying attention to the first game or two of the preseason over the last 3 or 4 years. It's pretty much where a lot of these guys have come from. So altogether, when you put it all into one perspective and you think about how this Showboats team has played, and I've been emphatic on how bad they were 0-4 coming into this, you would think that the Stallions had this easily. And I said this last week based on how the Showboats were playing the first 4 weeks. The Stallions had this, move on to the next game. And I didn't give any credit, and I threw way too much shade on the Showboats in the moment. And I will sit here and be humble enough to take it back and say I was wrong. I was wrong with how I predicted this game to go. And 99.9% of anybody who covers the UFL was wrong, because I didn't see anybody out there picking the Showboats to win. I didn't see anybody to pick this to be a close game. And I also didn't see anybody predict this to go into overtime, in which it did. And it was probably, I would say, if I had a vote for if we could start a thriller of the week, that's what this was. That's literally what this game was a thriller of the week, because it literally came down to overtime. And, you know, they're going for 2-point attempts, because literally when you get to the overtime, you're in 2-point conversion territory, and you convert and you convert and you convert until one misses. And when one misses, it's literally the game. So they went back and forth, and we finally got to a 24-20 game for the Showboats to win. And I kind of like how this came down to it, because you didn't have a really long, over, drown-out extra quarter to where viewership would be decreased by not watching an extra quarter of a game. You had kind of like what it felt like in hockey with the shootouts, you know, when you have the other players go up there, even though you're still running plays and you have a drive, you're not running a whole 10-minute quarter like you would in college or NFL. So for me, for the first time, we did not see this out of the Memphis Showboats in quite some time. But I did let it go twice, because the Stallions, in comparison to what they've been playing like the previous 3 years leading up to 2025, they, as a whole, on all 3 phases, because they're getting really lazy on special teams. Defense is not as well because defense is what carried them over the past few years. And their offense, surprisingly, is better than their defense and their special teams. They don't have their balance like they once did. So if they can find their balance, then they will not take too many more of these the rest of this year. And I can't click that button enough for some other teams out here in the league. Let's go ahead and take it on to the Saturday games. So here for the Saturday games, we had some matchups. Just one, because things are starting to shift more into Sunday now that we don't really have too much going on Sundays, except for NASCAR, if you want to watch a bunch of left-hand turns. But here now, you look at this game that we had between the Panthers and the Battlehawks. It was a close one. You had two teams coming into this, one that was 3-1 coming in and the other that was 2-2. And the Panthers, who were 3-1, evened up the odds when it came to the record by the end of this, as they lost 32-27 by the end of this game. The Nakua brothers definitely played in this game, but they were a little quiet in comparison to what they've done in, previous weeks. Samson Nakua did not find the end zone for the Panthers. He did have 3 receptions for 46 yards. Good old Turner for them as well had 8 receptions for 71. And COC Mariner had 6 receptions for 111 yards, but unfortunately that was not enough for the Panthers to win this game. 27 points normally would win you a football game in this league and many others, but when you're playing against a Battlehawks team that is seasoned and has been looking primed to go for a run at this UFL championship in the near future, it is not surprising that the Battlehawks found a way to win this game, especially at home in front of their home crowd last week. So for the Panthers to go from 3-1 to 3-2 and the Battlehawks to improve from 2-2 to 3-2, it was absolutely huge for us to see this type of turnaround for the Battlehawks. For the Panthers, I'm not too worried about them, but we'll talk more about them here in a little bit as we get closer towards breaking down week 6 in the games this weekend. Now, with discussing this one, I didn't go too much in depth for it because I want to save a little time for the next two, because one of them was really surprising and the other not so much, but still the game of the week. And they're highly touted games that I have on this list, and I wanted to spend a little extra time on them. And fortunate enough, they both happened to be last Sunday. So here with last Sunday's games, we had the 2 games between a team that has been looking pretty bad in comparison to what they did last year in their run to the UFL title game. And we have another that looks like they're trying to actually get to the UFL title game this year. And neither one of them are in this game I'm going to talk about, but the next game, one of them is. But this one, between the Roughnecks and the Brahmas, the Roughnecks, who have been looking like the Showboats for the past few years, have actually been turning it around here over the past few weeks and getting 2 wins out of their last 3 games. And they're now 2-3 in comparison to the Brahmas, who were 1-3 coming into this game, who have been struggling, but it looked like they're still struggling even more when Kellen Mond was severely under pressure. And Kellen Mond, if you're not sure, is the quarterback who's in this picture with the football. And look at the pressure on him around the defense of the Houston Roughnecks. This was a scene that we saw a lot of in this last Sunday's contest as the away team beat up on the home team 27-3, which is why I have it listed as the dumpster fire of the week. And they took a big old fat O. The Battle of Texas between Houston and San Antonio was not on the side of the Brahmas because they were one of the top tier dumpster pelicans of the week, and probably the dumpster pelican of the week when you consider the Showboats actually getting the type of win that they got. So looking at this for what it is, let me know out here in the chat, those of you who are listening, whether this is on YouTube for you, X, Twitch, LinkedIn, and the main things that we have going live right now, or on the replay, let us know what your thought is when it comes to this game. Let's break it down a little bit more, though, shall we? The Roughnecks and the Brahmas. The Roughnecks, with this type of production for 27 points, we're not used to seeing this type of action from them. And the reason why is they had a little bit of help from their defense in this game. Yes, their offense did score 2 touchdowns, but they were set up by their defense. Good old Mr. White, Zay White of the Roughnecks, Zaquandre White. I call him Zay. Zay White. Good old Zay White had a rushing touchdown in this game. But he also had a little help from his backup running back. Good old Kirk Merritt, who had 4 carries on the day for 20 yards, but he was able to get enough production on the ground. 6 carries for 24 yards. My apologies. But he did have one of those as a long 21. So a 1-yard run for the touchdown. Got that secondary touchdown for the offense of the Roughnecks, but it was all set up by how their defense was putting that pressure on the Brahmas offense. Looking at Kellen Mond in this picture, looking like an absolute dumpster pelican with the look on his face. Kind of like an Eli Manning Jr. look on his face, just absolutely confused at what's happening in this moment because the Roughnecks were putting the pressure on good old K-Mon to where they were setting up the other team's offense to good plays and good touchdowns by their running game. But the defense themselves actually did have a touchdown on the interception. But Mr. Williams himself, Rashad Williams, got the interception and took it to the house. Between him, he was a key player with that, the touchdown and 2 tackles. You had Zaquandre White with 11 attempts at 40 yards and the touchdown for the running back I was telling you about. You had Jalen Elliott of the Brahmas, even though they were dumpster pelican worthy, with an interception and 3 tackles. And Kobe Jones, a defensive end of the Brahmas, also had a sack, 1 forced fumble, and 4 tackles on the day. Besides there, it wasn't really much special between the two teams. Kellen Mond, the quarterback in this picture, absolutely was terrible as a starter for 3.5 quarters. 4 of 9, 44.4% completed out of passes, 3.9 yards per attempt, had 1 interception, and a QBR, get this, ladies and gentlemen, of 15.7. This man absolutely set the tone for someone who deserved to take the... What are your thoughts? What do you think? Does he deserve to get this much shade, especially when Jared Quarantano came in for 1.5 quarters and had 15 passing attempts in 1.5 quarters, had 15 passing attempts. Now, he only completed 6 of those 15, 40% completion percentage, so it's 4.4 less percentage than good old Kellen Mond, but he did put up 29 yards, which is 6 less than Kellen Mond on 2 more completions. So, yes, he did even worse. And he had 1.9 yards per pass completed, and also had an interception, and also had a pretty bad QBR of 20.1. So when you add the two together, 20.1 and 15.7, it's like, what, 35.8? And you divide that by 2? That increases Kellen Mond's QBR when you add the 2 together and divide it. Because then he has like, what, an 18 QBR instead of a 15? Teammates really help each other out here in these streets. That's the best way I can really put it together and sum it up and make it to where it makes sense. Or at least try. I'm trying. Did it? I'm not too sure. I tried to help the situation. The running game was not good at all. Anthony McFarland had 6 carries for 40 yards, averaged 6.7 yards per attempt. In the receiving game, their top receiver had 1 catch for 24 yards. That's right, 1 catch for 24 yards. Jontre Kirkland was active with 4 catches, but only mustered up 21 yards. The Roughnecks defense was the story for this game. Absolutely got things done. And yes, I mean, Dante, I'll give you this. I actually liked him coming out of Mississippi too. In college, he looked good. And UFL, the league, it's hungry. These guys who are out there on the field, they want to play because they want a shot at the NFL. A lot of these guys are players like we saw in this past week's NFL draft, where they didn't go undrafted. They went undrafted. They got a shot. They were on the practice squad last year. Didn't pan out. And now they're back trying to get another opportunity. Then we got some other players out there who we haven't even seen in the NFL, who didn't even get that far, who's looking to even get the taste of the practice squad. So they're hungry, and they're coming out there playing, and they're ready. Like these defensive players we're talking about. And the next game we're going to talk about featured a lot of defensive action. So we will definitely get to that here shortly. But I'm with you. That's why I've thrown the shade at Kellen Mond over the past month since the UFL started, because I had such high hopes for him taking over at the quarterback position for the San Antonio Brahmas. And this Brahmas team with Case Cookus, who's a backup for another team, he's a backup for the Birmingham Stallions right now, was the leading quarterback for this team last year for the Brahmas that made it all the way to the UFL championship. So looking at that, thinking about how not too much was changed except for a few other pieces on offense, but their main key players, especially their receivers and their running backs, are the same. The chemistry is there with them. Kellen Mond, for what he was at Mississippi and the how highly touted he was, I would have thought he would have been able to slide in and just fit right in. But it just goes to show that you can't always find the right piece to gel with the chemistry that you have built around you. You think about Wade Phillips and how this team was like 0-3 and he had to step down, and they are what they're doing now after him. This interim head coach that's there is 1-1 since Wade Phillips stepped down. So it's just looking pretty wild out here. I feel bad for the players on this team that fought to go to the UFL championship game last year, because it's not looking like they're going to get there in 2025. Sick Diggy's in the house says, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And what's good, everybody? Well, what's good with you? Sick Diggy all the way from Norway tuning in to see what's happening out here on Total Football Talk episode 81. And I'll even click the transition for you. Cole is off this week, but will be back next week. He was off last week because he was on the road, following the Easter holiday. And this week he actually celebrated his 39th birthday. So he will be back next week and just could not make it today. So that's why we're doing a different time. I pushed it back a little bit later since I'm going solo. Figure I'd be comfortable at a later time and might be able to get some of you out here in the comments that can't normally get here early enough to help me out with some comment flow out here in these streams. Dante even says, do you think the problem with the UFL or the quarterbacks are in that career? I'm reading this wrong. Do you think that the problem with the UFL is the quarterbacks that are in there and their career is over? What happens now mentally? Because now many are getting actual shots at the NFL at the quarterback. Everyone else is. Yes, they're not getting, because not many are getting actual shots at the NFL at quarterback. Yes. And with this, that's a really good question, Dante. Thinking about the UFL and the quarterbacks, if you play to the level that Kellen Mond did and you get benched, more than likely that's a wrap, because there is no AAFL anymore, or what's that? I forget what that league was. You guys have to let me know in the chat which one it was, where the fans could go on the internet and vote for the plays. I don't know if it was, I forget if it was like you could do it through the app. There was like an app, and it was Johnny Manziel played in it. And I remember Terrell Owens, after he was elected into the Hall of Fame, I believe, played in this league for a season or a couple of games or something like that. I just remember that you could pick the plays. Long story short, unless there's something like that around it, the way Kellen Mond has been playing over the first 5 weeks of this season, if he isn't benched going into this 6th game this week, I will be very surprised. And if he plays like he has the first half of the season, because we're now halfway through the season in a 10-game season now, if he even plays remotely close to this again, he's that's it. Because the fact they even put Jarrett Guarantano in there, he was the backup last year, and he played last year and rotated in with Case Cookus, and there was somebody else. There was a third quarterback, because I remember Cole and I talking last year. It was like between 3 and 4 different quarterbacks that they had, a quarterback for every quarter on average with the amount of rotations they were doing at one point because of the injuries. And despite how the offensive line was kind of iffy last year and there were some injuries to the quarterback position, they still found ways to win. And it doesn't look like they have that grit this year. It's not looking all that great. But Dante, you ask a great question with that, and that kind of is a problem, because you don't get but so many opportunities in the NFL to start. And then when you have a league like this is what, us hardcore fans, you, Sick, others that watch this program, watch other programs, watch the game in general. We love the game of football. We watch this right now in May. I mean, you got the NBA playoffs. You've got Stanley Cup playoffs going on right now. Baseball is starting to warm up because, we're through that first slow month of the baseball season. We're starting to see better baseball play as we get warmer weather out here and get into the spring, summertime. This is a challenging time for professional football to be on TV. So every second you at the quarterback position trying to make a name for yourself, it counts. Just like me, like Cole, others out here doing this, like every second we're out here, it counts. Like the numbers might be slow on some streams, but they might be increasing. They'll be high on others. And one of those numbers is somebody that could change our life with promoting our product. And if we're not on our game, being able to talk what we're talking about, the subjects here, we miss an opportunity. It's the same thing with the quarterbacks in the UFL. We, haven't hit our opportunity yet. It's coming. I can feel it, especially with the fortune cookie I got this week. It's Chinese food, but we'll talk about that later. Shenanigans at its finest. But, and I do have some good news that I'm happy to share for somebody else who's been helping me out with Sartoba, but until he announces it, I'm not going to say it here. But it's been a very good week. So with all that being said, back to this with what you brought up there, Dante, the quarterback position, every second counts. And the problem with the UFL is, if you think about the high turnover where they're quick to make the switch because you're not pulling your weight. If you actually look at what Kellen Mond has had, the amount of opportunities he's had this year for the San Antonio Brahmas, he's had a lot of opportunities, brother. So if you can't get together by the game that we just saw last week and who you were playing with, the Houston Roughnecks, who came into this game with one win, just like you, and you couldn't find a way to win, it's not looking good for Kellen Mond. And unfortunately, the time that you and I thought was a good time at Mississippi was a flash in the pan for his style of play in professional football. As we have Kellen Mond back up here, and I will show you the score one more time if you're just now tuning in between X, Facebook, well, no, not on Facebook today, X, YouTube, Twitch, and LinkedIn. Between all of you out there watching this, you are now tuning into the comments from the dumpster fire of the week. And these other comments that we also have from you guys, thank you for bringing them on in, and we'll continue to bring in the comments. As he also says, yeah, it's weird that you are really taking a chance going into the draft actually outside of Cam. All the quarterbacks should have stayed another year in college. And I'm going to bring this comment back up here in a little bit, Dante. That was perfect, because when we get to that topic, I'm actually going to have a special edition of In or Out Sports Debate on today's show for some of these draft picks. So when we come back from the commercial break in between the UFL segment of the opening drive and then talking about the main topics of it, you'll see some special things in this one today, my man. So you guys stay tuned. We've got a special episode to fill some gaps today. So bringing back In or Out into a different show for the first time ever, and clicking on the In or Out transitions for the first time in quite some time to hopefully get me revved up to bring that show back at some point in the near future. Sick also says that would be a fan-controlled football, FCF. Yes, that is exactly correct. But that was around for only a couple of seasons, yes. I'm thinking past. The older we get, some of these things that feel like they were yesterday were like several years ago. So, especially with what my body's been through, forgive me for thinking that it happened like a year or two ago. But yes, that is exactly what it is now that you say that. I remember now being called FCF and fan-controlled football league. Also says, and they broadcasted on Twitch, DAZN, Peacock, VENN, and LX. Peacock, I wonder if that's you can go back and watch the games on Peacock. Like if I went, because I got a subscription there, because of course, pro wrestling fans, you being in Norway, you can watch stuff through the WWE network and NordVPNs and all sorts of wild stuff. And I guess if I did all that, I could use the NordVPN and still use WWE Network. But just for simplicity, I have the Peacock subscription to watch the premium live events. And I'm going to have to go see if FCF is available on this Peacock app after our show today. But we still have like an hour and a half, 2 hours before we got to get on out of here. We got plenty of things to talk about in this show today. And by the way, nice look. Well, I appreciate it. Relocations. Make some moves. But you know how it is out here. Sick. Definitely having some fun. Got some new spectacles here recently. Did a little trimming on the beard. That's why in the opening segment, just to go off subject again, just because it's fun. Did a little trimming. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, back out here with football, having fun. And right here and now, when you look at the opening drive, we've covered 3 out of 4 games. We still have the game that I'm most excited to talk about right here and now to cover an opening drive. That game is this: the DC Defenders beating the Arlington Renegades in Arlington. When you look at the fact that the Defenders, who recently took a big old fat old stinking, they needed this win. They needed this win pretty bad, and they got it on the road, proving to 4-1, beating the Arlington Renegades, who have looked really good in the wins that they've had, but looked really confused in the 2 losses that they've had this year. And in this particular one, when you look at the production that you've had out of Luis Perez, arguably one of the best quarterbacks of the UFL, the XFL, that we have seen, here in the recent years since the XFL was revived and then merged with the USFL. One of the bright spots of quarterback play that we have seen throughout the past 3 years has been from Luis Perez. And then, of course, not this year because he's out of football this year, AJ McCarron, who we saw the first 2 years of the St. Louis Battlehawks. Well, the first few years, my apologies, because he was there for the first couple of years of the XFL and the first year of the UFL. But you're going up against Jordan Ta'amu, who has played pretty good football consistently as far as not turning the ball over for the DC Defenders. But he throws the ball a lot and is struggling to get 50% of his passes completed. And he does have a turnover or 2 in a game. And unless he slings it for 2 or 3 touchdowns, it's tough to get the win when he's turning the ball over like that. And I'm not just talking about interceptions. He's bobbled the ball and fumbled it a few times already in this season. And some of the, 2 of the 4 wins before the 2 of the 3 wins before this 4th win of the year could have gone the other way, arguably, because of the inability to protect the football. So this game is huge because they're playing against a Renegades team on the road, and the DC Defenders need to make a statement now at the midway point of the year to tell the league and everybody else that's watching like they're a team to really not take lightly, and that they have now 4 wins out of 5 games for the greatest of reasons, because you've got a quarterback that, even though he turns the ball over sometimes and he completes 50% of his passes in under on a consistent basis, he can sling it for 300 yards. And the only quarterback in this week, and I think the only quarterback this year that has multiple 300-yard passing games, and especially when you only played 5 games already, but still, only quarterback to throw 300 passing yards. I mean, it's still tough. When you have teams, which these teams are constructed primarily focusing on defense. You've even got out of these 8 coaches in the league, it seems like the majority of them, including Wade Phillip, like they're defensive minded. Like this is a defensive minded league. Dwayne Johnson, the Rock, part owner of the UFL, played defense in college and in football leading up to the college level. And even when he played CFL, I mean, he was trying to be a defensive end. Loves defense. So for this to be a primarily defensive driven league is what it feels like. And then you have a game like this to where it's 37-33 at the end with a combined score of 80 motherfathering points. This was nice to see. It was nice to see what felt like a duel between Jordan Ta'amu and Luis Perez. Luis Perez throwing for 268 passing yards as well. Had a turnover also. Both of these quarterbacks turning the ball over multiple times between the two, but both quarterbacks had a relatively good QBR, even with the turnovers. Jordan Ta'amu had an 84.3 QBR in comparison to Luis Perez's 91.5, but that's not a surprise coming from Luis Perez because we've seen this type of play from him throughout this year and the previous years leading up to 2025. He himself, 23 of 33 for 69.7 completed percentage of passes, 268 passing yards, 8.1 yards per pass, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Also ran it once, but did have 10 yards on that carry. Kalen Ballage, absolutely great addition this guy has been at the running back position for them this year. He's been my grand champ of the week once at least, maybe twice. Can't recall at this point. I know at least once. But he had almost 80 yards, 79 yards on 10 carries, and a touchdown as a bright spot for this team. You also had another rushing touchdown by Davion Smith, the 2 running backs combining for 2 touchdowns and over 80 yards on 11 carries. You also had a receiving touchdown by good old Deontay Burnett, the 1 receiving touchdown on the 1 passing touchdown by Luis Perez. This team was putting up a fight, putting up 33 points on the day, and usually 33 points will get you a win in professional football, but not on this day, as the defenders put up 37 points. And we were talking about Jordan Ta'amu a minute ago. 23 of 46 was how he was 50% on the completion, but he had 308 passing yards. We did talk about he had the 1 interception, but he threw not 1, not 2, but 3 passing touchdowns. So with those 3 passing touchdowns, you tip the scale. That's how you had the 84.3 QBR, averaging 6.7 yards per pass. Not as many yards per pass completed as your opponent over there in Luis Perez, but you threw 46 times, completed 23 of them. Both quarterbacks completing 23 passes, but Luis Perez just having 13 less passing attempts, which is why he had a 69.7 completion percentage. I think that when you look at the two, defense was key in this game. And even though the Renegades scored 33 points on the defenders, one of the brightest spots that Cole and I have been talking about for the first 4 weeks of this season, we've been talking about the fact that defenders have had a really good defense. And for them to give up 33 points to the Arlington Renegades speaks volumes. And I know Cole would agree with me on this. Speaks volumes on the fact that, one, you were able to score 33 points on a very dominant DC defenders defense that we've seen this year. 2, it speaks volumes on the weaknesses that were exploited in this game by the Arlington Renegades that no other team could do throughout the first 4 weeks of the season, because that's why this DC defenders team, even though they had lost a game, they didn't lose like this in that game. So looking at it for what it is, if you're the defenders, you're happy you got the win, but you're counting your lucky stars and holding your breath because You cannot continue to play like that because you could easily be the one that's sitting here 3-2 on this day, and the Renegades be 4-1, which is why I have this as the game of the week, because it could have gone either way. It was tight, even throughout the fourth quarter. When you go into the fourth quarter and the amount of scores that we had a field goal by the Renegades early into the fourth quarter, and they were up 33-22. 33-22, okay? And the DC Defenders scored twice within that quarter, because after they got the field goal to go up 33-22, the Defenders scored on an 11-play drive for 65 yards for a touchdown to make it a 30-33 game, scoring on a 2-point conversion to go from 22 points to 30 points. And they would do this on a Jordan Ta'amu rush up the middle for 2 yards, because even though the guy had 3 passing touchdowns, he also scored on the ground as well, which is what makes this even more of a special day for him. 8 carries for 37 yards on the ground on top of his 300-yard passing day, 4.6 yards average per carry, 1 touchdown, and that 2-yard touchdown that he had was absolutely huge for them to only be down by a field goal at this point. You could have easily scored a field goal, tied it up. But what happens on this next drive? So after you score 30-33 is where you're at this point. The Renegades have an opportunity to then go from a 3-point lead to increase it by more. What do? They fumble the football. As Kalen Ballage, who has been a big weapon for them at the running back position for the Renegades, fumbled the ball. And he did this at midfield, which gave the DC Defenders a really good spot. But when you look at where they were at here, there's 4 minutes and 50 seconds on the clock. They run 2 plays. And on the second play, with 4 minutes and 14 seconds left in the fourth quarter, down by 3, Jordan Ta'amu throws an interception to good old A. Harris. I'm going to just be honest, I forgot what his first name was. It just says A there. So I'm just going to say A. Harris of the Renegades to the 20-yard line. He throws it, and it sets up them, even though it's 80 yards to go, because the DC Defenders were gunning for a touchdown. This interception, even though with 80 yards to go, the momentum should have shifted back in the favor of the Renegades, but not so fast. The Renegades end up punting 2 minutes later, and with 2 minutes and 1 second on the clock, the Defenders would take over with literally a 2-minute drill to run at the 2-minute warning in the fourth quarter. They would score a touchdown to go up 37-33, which would be the final score, because the Renegades would get one more chance to try to take the win with 57 seconds left in the game. But an interception, the one interception we talked about, Luis Perez throwing, happened on that drive. And that's how the game would end. A couple of kneel downs, and the game would be over. Both quarterbacks throwing their one interception on the day in the fourth quarter. They both threw their interception literally in the fourth quarter, as I just said. So they did really well through 3.5 quarters. And in the last half, there was so much pressure. The Renegades defense even stepped up and was able to put pressure not only on the DC Defenders, like the DC Defenders were doing to the Renegades all game, but the one thing was Luis Perez had an answer every single time, it felt like, which is why they were able to put up the amount of points that they did. If Ballage doesn't fumble that ball, regardless of the 2 interceptions thrown, because I don't think that the interception really would have mattered if we would have even gotten to that point late in the fourth quarter by Luis Perez, because if Ballage doesn't fumble that football, when the DC Defenders score, they're still down by a few points if the roles are reversed, if he doesn't fumble that ball. And I think the Renegades win this game. So that's why I said what I said earlier with the DC Defenders need to count their lucky stars, look back on what they were exposed at, because if they continue to play like that the next time against the Renegades, and especially in the playoffs, they will not win. However, they will see one big old fat O. That right there is your game of the week. We have many things to still talk about, but with that being the game of the week, and we have closed it out with that discussion of what that was, we still have many more to discuss in this game. Not this game, but in this show. Between the NFL draft results, a special in or out special edition that I have for this episode. With that, we got to talk about Steve Smith and the main topic here, busted for bumping uglies unethically. I mean, that's going to be a really fun topic. But you got the Grand Champ of the Week, the Snowflake of the Week, Henry Ruggs III, a great beard, all that on your electronic screen and more. But we'll talk about all that when we come back from our first commercial break.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989 on 2. Ready? Break.
We're just getting started. Total Football Talk will return right after this. Whether it's news, the largest egg producer finds bird flu in chickens at a Texas plant, weather, devastating tornadoes rip through the heart of the United States, inspiration, a breast cancer survivor completed the journey of chemotherapy, and now begins a future one of matrimony or sports. Michael Jordan is shown on a photo with Diddy. LeBron James has a video extolling the virtues of a Diddy party. This has been yet another beating a dead horse presentation. We got you covered. BS3 Network, in association with Comey Media Incorporated, proudly present The Morning Shift with Cole Johnson. Live every weekday at 8 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Central. Hey, Eagles fan. Join my man Cool McCain and a host of others as they break down every single game, every single week in an objective manner, and also from a fan's perspective as well. Remember, this cast feels just like you. Nobody likes you. And you don't care. Fly, Eagles, fly. Eagles Elite Podcast, every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and other podcast.
In Boston, I love you morons. New Kids from the Block, New Edition,
Dear whatever the law firm is. Sincerely, the U.S. Supreme Court.
Ben Affleck, Matt Damon. Go yourself again, Jason Whitlock.
Oh, yeah, it's that time again. We are back for episode 82 of Total Football Talk. I am Drew Willingham, representing Sartoba Media and my man Cole Johnson's Comey Media today as we are live right now.
What?
We're live right now talking about busted for bumping uglies unethically. Steve Smith Sr. to everybody else in this stream. Welcome to the show. As we got plenty of things to talk about, we've got an extended version of Opening Drive today. And with that being said, we've got a few things we have to talk about today. First of all, just like in the main title right here, busted for bumping uglies unethically. Steve Smith Sr., thirsty on the bottom left part of this graphic right here and pointing on over to the busted for bumping uglies. Right here, ex-NFL star Steve Smith allegedly ruined a marriage earlier this year, and now he's being sued over it. Antonio Martinez claims in a lawsuit, which he filed in North Carolina this week, that Smith broke up his loving relationship with Nicole Martinez after he willingly, maliciously, and intentionally seduced her during a 2024 encounter in September of last year in Baltimore. Antonio alleges that the former Ravens wideout met Nicole while he was in town to shoot an episode of the NFL's Most Interesting Jobs with Steve Smith. Antonio says Nicole was a member of the Ravens marching band, and Smith got close to her as he joined the group for the NFL Network show. Smith, by and though an agent of the NFL, Antonio wrote in the suit, provided his phone number to contact and communicate with Nicole. Subsequently, he added, Smith began communicating with Nicole, calling her and exchanging numerous text messages with her. Antonio claims some of the messages contained very explicit content, including pictures of Smith's genitals and videos of Smith pleasuring himself. Wow. The suit states that Smith then had sex with Nicole in January of 2025 after the two had attended a Ravens playoff game together. You can go and read this suit. It's all online. Afterwards, Antonio claims that Smith continued to text, contact, exchange messages with Nicole and seduced her further. Antonio shared that some of the messages that he says Steve sent to his wife, including one that read, I can't read that. I can't read that. No, I'm not going to read that. Like, I'll put the link to this article in the chat. There's some things I have to bleep myself out in the moment. But according to the suit, Antonio found out about it all in February and then confronted Steve over the matter in a phone call, which was recorded and later posted to social media. Antonio states in the suit that he eventually filed for divorce from Nicole, with whom he had one child. And there's a picture there. And Steve, you could do better, okay? As a result of Smith's actions and the adulterous relationship between Smith and Nicole, the lawsuit states the existing love and affection which existed between the plaintiff and his wife was alienated and destroyed. Antonio is suing for over $100,000. Smith has not yet publicly commented on the matter. So, with all this being said, there's multiple articles out there about this one. And usually I am not as, I would say, hip to TMZ as others would be, and in certain articles out here in these streams. But this one I did read from TMZ, and it had a lot of facts in there, and you could even look at the pictures of the individuals and the clips from the actual, suit itself. So I might download those images and clip this out and make a little short video and put on YouTube here this weekend to talk about that. But that's part of our main topics here. We do have plenty of other things to talk about, but busted for bumping uglies unethically. Steve Smith Sr., what are your thoughts out here in the live chat, ladies and gentlemen? I just went through that entire suit, gave you the facts and everything. What do you think is going to happen with good old Steve Smith Sr.? Will this affect his NFL football legacy? Oh, back when we were talking about WWE Network, it shifted over to completely Netflix on January 1st. So now it's not WWE Network. You get Raw and SmackDown on Netflix. I know we get Raw on Netflix, but do you get Raw and the PLEs? But what about SmackDown? What's going on with that? We'll shift back to that here when you respond to that there, Sick. And let's be clear. There are some men that walk this earth who will take your girl, Mr. Steal Your Girl, and there are nothing you can do about it. Usher, Chris Brown, George Clooney, and now Steve. Keep pounding. So much hate. Oh, no, it's Steve keep pounding Smith because you think about the Panthers. The Panthers keep pounding. That is absolutely great, Dante. That's absolute fire. Steve keeps pounding Smith. So let me get this straight, or crooked if folks prefer. Steve Smith Sr. Is being sued for ruining another man's marriage. Does this plaintiff of the lawsuit actually have a case? I mean, from what I read, he's got the text messages. Somebody in this case is taking the I mean, they are, whether you like it or not. It's just absolute fact out here. I mean, this could turn out to be the... It could. But Steve Smith's got money. He's going to throw a few bucks. This guy is not going to get $100,000. Might get a quarter of it, and this thing's going to get swept under the rug. I don't see it actually going to court. And some of those messages were pretty X-rated, weren't they? Yes, because I was about to read them. I was, when I read, like I could, if I had a teleprompter set up, because I got multiple monitors in my office set up, right? Like I got multiple monitors here, which is like how I'd have things organized to be live and to be able to provide the facts. Because I, know how to read a little bit. All right. So I could have a teleprompter set up, but I don't. But it just goes to show, if I had somebody like, if you remember Anchorman and Ron Burgundy typing away, if somebody was typing away, I would be that guy to almost read all the way through. Be tough to stop myself. That's why you will not see me working for the major platforms like ABC, NBC, CBS. That is not in my forte. I am not Dan Rather. I cannot read from a teleprompter. Not live on national television. Surprised more people don't sue. I mean, when you really look at it, nowadays, back in the 90s, 2000s, early 2010s, people tripping on a sidewalk, there was a rut in the road or whatever, pothole, and you're walking, you trip, you get hurt, especially if it's at a business. Dante, where you and I are near, the city of Colonial Heights, Burger King, the one that used to be a Burger King, but it's now a marijuana dispensary store. Okay. It used to be a Burger King, but before that they shut down because a guy tripped out in the parking lot and sued him for like $800,000. Okay. When we talk about people suing, this whole Steve Smith situation, I mean, I think it's going to get thrown out. You might throw a few bucks and this thing gets swept under the rug. But just as an example, old Burger King guy trips in the parking lot, gets $800,000. This was like 2008, 2009. Now, when you hear cases, unless they involve big time celebrities, and when it comes to like businesses or something like that, where they have to get in, where they're involved in a suit, you don't really get that much anymore. You literally, if they have like body parts of a human being now, and like certain body parts are only worth a certain amount for lawsuits. So if this is, you're suing for pain and suffering, okay, I don't think you're going to be able to get like you would even in a injury settlement, let alone something like this, even though Steve Smith is famous. And I bring all this up in reasoning for, if they're lowering the amount that you can get for injuries, then they are probably going to lower what you can get as a butthurt snowflake, because you could not do your job as a husband. Okay. Should have been paying attention. And, if you would have done your job paying attention right, could have got her for adultery, and it wouldn't be Steve Smith's fault. Okay. Despite what Steve said in those text messages, she still made the decision to cheat. She still did it. So regardless of what Steve did, it's not like he physically assaulted her and picked her up, and there were things that happened as a result of that. This was an encounter that was consensual by both parties. That's what I was looking for. I got it right in time. The consensual word. Yes. You get Raw, SmackDown, NXT, PLE, as well as previous pay-per-views on Netflix. I'm okay. I'm looking for the right button.
Surprise, motherfucker.
Because that is, we don't get SmackDown on Netflix because we still have to have a cable subscription and watch it on USA if we want to watch it here in the USA. Isn't that nice? Because with you getting all that in one, congratulations, you over there in another country, my man Sick Diggy.
Oh, my brother, testify.
but it's still got me up. All right. Dante says $100,000 is not enough for the embarrassment. I would have taken that to the grave unless he's loaded and more with the prenup. Oh, yeah. $100,000 does seem like a really low lawsuit to put all over national television, especially, Steve Smith makes that in a year with what he does, covering the NFL and media, and with him still being a staple within the players union of the game. So this thing's going to get thrown out, man. That's just what I think, to be honest. I brought this up here more for a filler and just to have fun with it, and maybe have some shenanigery and make clips like we have, than to actually bring it up and just say he's going to be sued for millions of dollars. It's not happening out here. But more than likely, they might settle out of court, or the lawsuit could be thrown out by the court. Yeah, that's exactly where I'm thinking out on that too. So, I mean, if anything beyond that happens there, Sick Diggy, I would be absolutely surprised. You, myself, I mean, Dante, what do you think? Would you be surprised if this thing actually goes the distance and we see good old Steve Smith lose it for himself? I don't think so. I just don't see it happening, guys. I really don't. I really don't think pain and suffering, aka mental anguish. I mean, this guy should have probably just taken a mental health day, got his ducks in a row with an attorney, and divorce his wife, because it's not Steve Smith's fault. Steve did not force her to do this. She did not do it against her will. So when you look at it for what it is, this is how it is, in my opinion. So good old Steve making things happen out here in these streets. Moving on to the next article of business. Henry Ruggs III training in prison in hopes of getting a second chance in the NFL via former teammate Josh Jacobs. Henry Ruggs III isn't giving up on a return to the NFL as he awaits parole 2 years after pleading guilty to causing a 2021 car crash that killed a woman and her dog. Packers running back Josh Jacobs is still in touch with his former Alabama teammate, and he revealed some details of their correspondence during an appearance on the Pivot podcast with Ryan Clark on Tuesday. That included the ex-Raiders wide receiver staying ready for a potential NFL second chance as he serves time in prison. He says he still talks to Henry, and Henry still calls him. He still helps him out, and they're still connected, and he knows his whole family. He's from Alabama, and he played with him at Alabama as well. His mother and them taught him how to bowl, professionally bowl. Not professionally bowl, but the game of bowling in a bowling alley. Keeping up with him and hearing him talk, it brings me spirits, he says, because he's always positive, even though given the circumstances. He's positive about everything. He's training. They let him train and things like that. So I'm like, when you come out, man, I don't know if you will get a chance, but keep on training. Jacob says that he's been talking to people around the league for Ruggs, and some have been receptive. They've been saying a couple of teams are willing to give him a chance, Jacob said. I'm like, when you get a chance, man, you better not ever. Don't look back and prove to yourself, prove to everybody that one decision doesn't define you and who you are as a man. Ruggs, a former first-round pick, pleaded guilty in May 2023 to driving his sports car at speeds up to 156 miles an hour after drinking at a Las Vegas Topgolf and friend's house before the crash that killed a 23-year-old woman by the name of Tina Tinter. He pleaded guilty to one count of driving under the influence, resulting in a death, a felony, and a misdemeanor count of vehicular manslaughter. Ruggs, now 26, will be first eligible for parole in August 2026 after his plea deal got him sentenced for 126 months. He played 2 seasons for the Raiders, catching 50 passes for 921 yards and 4 touchdowns in 20 games after getting released days after the crash. Jacob said during the podcast that he instantly got mad upon hearing about the crash, and things only grew worse the more he found out. I start finding out about the whole story, and he's about how they were supposed to be racing. I'm like, who was he with? But he was with his family, so he went to his house and had some words with some people over there. And he's just like, man, y'all got to understand, like the breadwinner of the family, he's the one changing all of your lives, like everybody. And with that being said, that's basically where they're at. Like, you've got someone that's serving a 126-month sentence who is eligible for parole in literally a little over a year. And when you think about all that, yeah, he will be out before he's 30, more than likely, and still be in decent shape. But when Michael Vick went to jail is for a couple of years, and there was two totally different things. And we're not going to sit here and weigh out what was worse than other and who deserves more time and who didn't deserve a second chance and who does, or whatever the case may be, because what is what is for one, and what isn't for another is still yet to remain, because the man's still 26 and still has an opportunity as far as his age. Now, the wide receiver position in age is a lot different than the quarterback position. And, reading that information to you guys to talk about this, to see your thoughts and looking back on it, it's going to be much, much tougher for not only Ruggs to get back into the NFL based on his age and the shape, but for what he did, because, it was a lot I wouldn't say a lot easier, but the road traveled for Michael Vick to come back to the NFL from what he did wasn't as detailed as what this one is going to be, because even though what Michael Vick did was bad with many, many animals' lives, many dogs' lives, this involved like literally an everyday human being like one of us. Like, whether it was a male or female, it was a female, a 23-year-old and her dog, and actually it involved an animal too. There's still two lives that were taken, a pet and a human, that didn't need to be taken. And it was taken by, even though Michael Vick had, you could say that he needed to be rehabilitated and go through therapy to learn that is not the way you behave as a human being, rehabilitate himself. And he did that part. That's, I feel like, an easier road for recovery in oneself and to be able to get back into the game and be a productive human being outside of the game, as well as a productive human being in the game, than what Henry Ruggs' path is going to be. Because even though he is younger than Vic at the time of the conviction and going to jail, and potentially younger when he gets out, he did this because he went out and partied and got behind the wheel. And it's tougher to not only prove that you are more mature, that you're not going to be doing that and getting behind the wheel at the, after committing a crime like that, but at the same time, he still has to live with that every day. So the good news is that he's being positive with the teammate, a former teammate and a current friend, for quite some time, that he can lean on while he's doing his time. I just hope that the positivity and the work ethic is all the way around full circle for him when he gets out, and can prove it to where he's not out partying and doing these things that got him where he is in the first place. Because it's just a really sad story. 24 years old, goes to jail. He's now 26 and he still has time, but it's still a very, very, very sad situation that nobody wants to see happen to anybody. But it just goes to show that, you put your shoes on, you tie them, you get in the car, you put the key in the ignition. And it's also your responsibility of what you do between the time you put the shoes on and you put the key in the ignition. Or if you already have the shoes on and you're out doing stuff, it's still your responsibility by the time you put the glass down to know when the right time to drive or the right time to get on the phone, call a friend, get an Uber, whatever you got to do to not be the one behind the wheel. Got some comments out here from you guys. Want to bring on up because Dante and Sick, you guys have been crushing it. Thank you, brothers, for being here. This is a very, very good substitute to have when Cole couldn't make it today, but he should be back next week. Hopefully you guys can still make it then. We'll be back at our regular time, 2 p.m. Eastern time, when he is here with me. But he says they'll settle out of court. Steve will give him his wife back. I had to lean out for a second. Just make sure, in case I had a tear to the eye, I had to lean out. But unless this guy is rich and trying to divorce her, yeah, I mean, but if the guy was rich, do you think he'd be trying to get 6 figures off of Steve? I mean, even though it's only 100,000, it's still 6 figures he's trying to get off of a man because he feels like it's the other guy's fault, even though his wife made the bad decision. You should see your wife, man. I don't know what type of paperwork you had before you put the ring on, but I think you're suing the wrong person here. Was this case filed in the state of Maryland? Maryland or Virginia doesn't have a fault divorce. I believe this was North Carolina. Let me go back. Excuse me. I accidentally clicked out of the article, but you know what I can do, because I'm like a nerd and stuff. I can go back here to the history, click on this, and bam. Hold on. What in the expletive? Oh, no, here it is. Here it is. All right. All righty then. North Carolina. So I was right. So yes, it was filed in the state of North Carolina. So, because even though he finished his career with the Baltimore Ravens, Steve Smith spent like his first, 15 seasons in Carolina with the Panthers, because he kept pounding. Isn't that right, Dante? Steve Smith kept on pounding. And he kept on pounding in North Carolina even after he was playing there while he was with Baltimore. He had 2 homes, one in Maryland and one in North Carolina, just outside of Charlotte. I don't know exactly where, but wild guess. But good old Stevie Smith giving the wife back. I like that take. That's one of my favorite takes out of all these, is giving the wife back. And I wonder, will this save as a good enough? No. That's why I'm going to have to edit in there. I'm going to have to find the picture, download it, probably edit the file into a JPEG or a PNG. I'm going to put it in that. I'm going to find some clips from this show this weekend. I'm going to make some clips out of this from today, from what we've been talking, especially from this topic. And I'm going to put the picture there, especially that part where I was like, I looked at the camera and I was like, and you can do better. It was something, I don't remember exactly what I said, but you guys were here. You know what I said. It was something along those lines. I know I looked at the camera and said that earlier. So that part will be a clip. And yes, we did that one. The Henry Ruggs situation sucks. I like that the players are still standing by their guy who made a horrible mistake, but a mistake he would get an opportunity again. Everybody deserves a second chance, man. They really do. And the Henry Ruggs situation makes a lot of people sick. But for him to have people reaching out to him to give him hope and for him to be positive about it, 126 months is a long time, but the parole option in August 2026 is definitely going to be big, especially if he gets paroled, because at that point he will still be 27, about 28 at that point. And thinking about what Michael Vick went through around the time that he got out of prison and had the opportunity with the Eagles, we could see something similar to that with Henry Ruggs by the time he's 29, 30 years old, potentially, maybe slightly younger at 28. But I'm thinking that he will get out at an early enough age to where there's hope. But only time will tell how society is going to react to just him being out at an early age before we can even get to that, because there was a big outcry when Michael Vick got out when he did. And then there was a pretty big outpour at first when he was let back into the league. But then when he started playing well with the Eagles, especially that one really, really good year that he played really well, I believe it was 2010. I wouldn't say all forgiven, but the fans of the league and the fans of Michael Vick started to warm back up to the guy. So I think there's still hope for this guy. He deserves a second chance, especially if he's being positive and repenting for what he did, and is truly feels remorse and, doing what he can It's really, really a tough situation to see, but there is some light at the end of the tunnel there, I believe. Any second chance should include maintaining sobriety and a clean lifestyle. Absolutely. Absolutely. Whether or not he gets to return to the NFL, he still has to rebuild his life. Shirley Riggs' soon-to-be 5-year-old daughter will motivate him to be a better person, especially by the time he gets out. She'll have gone from being in Huggies to being in elementary school by the time he gets out. So it's definitely a tough transition. Probably still using a pacifier or barely out of a pacifier, when he went in, and now when he gets out, book bag and shoes and watching her go to school and midway through elementary school, probably at that point, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, who knows, depending on how much time goes by. So it's going to be tough. Well, in that case, North Carolina doesn't have a no-fault divorce. So unless you had some type of prenup, I wonder, with that being the no-fault divorce, like if you have it written up for North Carolina, like you commit adultery, I mean, I don't have to give you anything and I can sue you or whatever. Maybe he's suing Steve because he didn't actually have that set up beforehand and she was bumping uglies. And that's why we are where we're at, with him being thirsty in the bottom left-hand corner, busted for bumping uglies unethically out here in these streets. And maybe on some turf. Who knows? Steve's got connections. I don't know. I'm just guessing. That's an assumption. All right. And I know it makes an ASS out of you and me, but I'm just saying I was making an assumption. All right. Give me a break. We are here for episode 82 of Total Football Talk today, live right now. I'm missing my man Cole, but you guys are helping me out here with some great comments, keeping things live and lit up between Sick Diggy and Dante for me for episode 82 right now. Dante also says, but Vic had a very different social club coming at him. That criminally cruelty group ain't no joke. PETA, P-E-T-A, I believe it was, which was really, really going after him on this. It was pretty bad. Ryan McCoffey is in the house, and you know what? I'm going to flip on over to this for Mr. McCoffey for a second. We've got to flip over to here, and for Mr. McCoffey, we have to click this button. Because I'm hoping that we get Mr. McCoffey back here very soon to talk some mother bothering football out here in these streams. But back here to the Total Football Talk side, that was the Total Football Talk extra folder. Back here and now, we want a prenup. We want a prenup. Yeah, we want a prenup. Okay. Somebody still is taking this. I don't like it, and neither do you. I still don't think it's Steve, but this situation could. As we talked about, earlier, we were talking about Ruggs' family teaching, the young man, his friend, Josh Jacobs, how to bowl. And now it's looking bowl and shoe ugly for good old Steve. Which one of the dumpster pelicans of the week is Steve, his friend that he was bumping uglies with? Let's do this again. Which one of these dumpster pelicans is Steve, Antonio, or his wife for the week? Because we just spent the past 15 minutes talking about something that you would see on a Lifetime TV show. Yes! Tears were shed, not really. People were upset, kinda. Somebody's gonna pay the tab, and it might be good old Steve.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who's not gonna be paying the tab?
Okay.
Probably not. Sick Diggies, absolutely happy Ryan McCoffey is here, just like myself, saying good evening to him as well. And Dante says, Ryan, because when she leaves your expletive, she's going to leave with half because you got me up.
What?
Got me up. Look at 2 times because you know it's true. That was perfect, Dante. That's what I'm talking about. Maury can't even be this great today. And this is taking me back to like if we had Jerry Springer and Morgan Freeman narrating a Jerry Springer. If we had Morgan Freeman narrating a Jerry Springer episode, this is what the results would be. Is what I'm feeling like when I'm seeing these comments on the screen. Kanye won't lying on gold. Like circa what, 2006, 2007? You take the money. Dante, 18 years. On his 18th birthday, he found out it wasn't his. Oh man, wasn't that when Kanye met Kimmy K? It was on that was the Gold Digger music video, and that's how that wild Hollywood synopsis came together between those two. And don't even get me started with that because I don't know enough of it, but I just know it was crazy. But yes, the Gold Digger song, yes. Dante is loving the shenanigery out here. Rut-row, Raggy, and two-time.
What?
I mean, we need to go walk up to her and tell her.
You guys want to hear a fucking story?
The story is this. Somebody.
I think I got my swagger back. Oh.
But the swagger is definitely not with Steve. Let's go ahead and see what we've got on the other side of our news for the opening drive. We got to talk about the Atlanta Falcons, defensive coordinator, and some wild things that happened during the NFL draft that we didn't get to talk about because it happened after we discussed some things last week. So the Atlanta Falcons and defensive coordinator fined for Shedeur Sanders' prank call. The Atlanta Falcons were fined $250,000 and defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich $100,000 for their involvement in the prank call of now Cleveland Browns quarterback Shedeur Sanders, the NFL announced on Wednesday. On April 25th, the second day of the NFL draft, around the time that we were actually live last week with episode 81, because we were live during the start of the second day of the NFL draft. On April 25th, the second day of the NFL draft, Sanders received a phone call from someone claiming to be New Orleans Saints general manager Mickey Loomis, who then briefly pretended Sanders would be drafted by the team before revealing the call to be a prank. On Sunday, Atlanta released a statement saying Jeff Ulbrich's 21-year-old son, was responsible for the call. The Falcons said the younger Ulbrich saw Sanders' contract information on his dad's iPad and provided the number to a friend. Jack Ulbrich was seated next to the unnamed friend in a video released of the call. We appreciate the NFL's swift and thorough review of last week's data exposure and the event that transpired due to it. The Falcons said in a statement Wednesday, we were proactive in addressing the situation internally and cooperated fully with the league throughout this process and accept the discipline levied to Coach Jeff Ulbrich and the organization. I'm so sorry I took away from your moment. It was selfish and childish, Jack Ulbrich said in an Instagram post, apologizing to Sanders for the call. I can never imagine getting ready to celebrate one of the greatest moments of your life, and I made a terrible mistake and messed with that moment. Thank you for accepting my call earlier today, and I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me. Sanders, who's 23 years old, was the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year for the Buffaloes last season, and he is NBC Sports' Connor Rogers' 30th ranked prospect in the entire class. There was speculation Sanders could be selected as high as number 3 to the New York Giants, and he was pegged by many different experts as a first-round talent. Instead, Sanders slid all the way to the 5th round, where he was selected 144th overall by the Browns. Sanders' fall in the draft drew widespread attention, including from President Donald Trump, who called owners stupid for not taking him earlier. This was an article written by NBC News, and Rohan Nadkarni was the man's name who wrote said article. So, with that, with the Atlanta Falcons and the defensive coordinator fined for Shedeur Sanders' prank phone call, what are your thoughts? With mine, that's $350,000. I mean, the team, I understand getting fined $250,000 because the process of who has that number to the players who could potentially be drafted in the upcoming draft, which are several hundred players. I feel like that's information that should not be privy to all coaches on the staff. I get it. The general manager, the owner, the head coach. I think just whoever's going to be making the expletive calls is going to be the person who should have that Rolodex of phone numbers, to be honest. And if they're sending out a phone to all the draft picks like they did, I think it was, they didn't say it in this article, but I believe, if I remember right, it was T-Mobile that was sponsoring that part of the draft where they send all the phones out to everybody. Everybody gets a phone specifically for this event. Then you send them back. Okay. The new iPhone, the newest, latest, or whatever. So when they're on the phone, I mean, people, the camera and everything, we see the latest, greatest phone, whatever. It's cool. I don't know if they get to keep it, send it back, but I just know that it's primarily sent, and this number is just for this event. So that way, in the event your number gets leaked out, the whole world doesn't know your exact day in and day out phone number. So my opinion with this is that, owner, GM, head coach, the three who should be making the call. All right. Your defensive coordinator, your offensive coordinator, yes, they're important to your staff and what you're building over there. But you can make the phone call, whether it's the owner, the GM, or the head coach. More than likely your head coach, because you've already got that report from the interviews, right? Your head coach makes the call, then you hand it over to the GM, the owner. And if for some reason the player kicked it off well with it being the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, hell, the water boy, whoever, hand the phone over after you've had your moment in that same moment of the call and continue the great congratulations. We'll see you at rookie minicamp, OTAs, whatever the case may be, however your conversation goes, whatever you worked out during the interview process of when you're going to see each other again. Okay. That's my opinion. You don't need to give it out to the entire organization. The Atlanta Falcons messed up. I feel like there's a little bit more to the story with that, but it's not proven. And until there's more facts to come out about it, I'm not going to give my full opinion on what I think might have happened, because I think they swept a little bit part of it under the rug. And why do the Atlanta Falcons have the Rolodex? Like, I get it. You have to have the Rolodex of the players because you want to be able to draft them. But I feel like you would be, if you had like a spreadsheet of people in numbers. To me, the way I work things out with the career field I am outside of this, I would be editing out the ones that I know I'm not going to take. Like there's certain individuals that in a draft class you are not going to take. You are not drafting a kicker in the first round. And more than likely nowadays, you're not even drafting a kicker in any point in the 7 rounds unless they are absolutely God's gift to the sport in their position of kicking footballs, like the garbage kicking, field goal picking. Oh, no, it was the garbage picking, field goal kicking Philadelphia phenomenon. Tony Danza in the 90s, that movie, okay? He wasn't drafted. He was a signed free agent, okay? Undrafted signed free agent, whatever you want to call him. 90s, Tony Danza, 48 years old, kicking field goals, kicking the part on the garbage truck just so it would crush the garbage, became a field goal kicker. Yeah, it's a Disney movie. I said it. I was a kid in the 90s. Don't get mad, get glad, and don't sue me because I'm supporting your hardware in plastic bags. Back to the original product, that being Tony Danza kicking field goals. No football and not drafting a kicker within the 7 rounds of the NFL draft anymore. So if you're not going to draft a kicker and you already got your quarterback last year in Penix, and you already have another quarterback that you're paying like $1 zillion to for the next few years in Kirk Cousins, and you have no reason to draft a quarterback whatsoever. Why do you even have this man's phone number or draft phone number, whatever the expletive? Why do you have the phone number? There's more to this story, ladies and gentlemen. Until you want to admit it, that's where we're at. Got some comments. Dante and Sick back here with, honestly, that should have resulted in an additional first-round pick loss. Now more players are coming out saying they were pranked. You're right where I was thinking, because, yes, $250,000 is a lot for the team. I mean, it's a lot for an individual. $250,000 for the team, not as much, because the revenue they get back, they'll be fine with that hit. Okay, tax write-off, whatever you want to do, I don't care. But they still won't be as affected by that as much as Jeff Ulbrich with the $100,000 of that he will have to pay in fines. Now, the key is the kid did it. If the kid is truly 100,000% at fault for hacking into his dad's iPad and doing this, do you charge the kid? If you're Jeff Ulbrich, how much allowance can you take back from now until the kid's like, 60 years old? I mean, how much allowance do you now not give the kid because he cost you 100 G's? That's the question I want to ask this man. That's the question. Carter says someone pranked him acting like they are from the Jags, and that has to be the most embarrassing emotional moment to cry, hug your family, then someone else gets announced. Yes, I would be pissed, because you're messing with the emotions of someone who put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, literally, not just the combine and the couple months leading up to the draft, the years they spent in college, every day at practice, 2-a-days. I mean, they're not really as privy on 2-a-days nowadays with the way workouts are restricted in comparison to what they were 15, 20 years ago. But, the amount of work still you got to put in to play any professional sport, and football still being the most physical of them all, there's a lot of respect that goes into that. And you are disrespecting all that time put into their craft when you do something like you did and prank them. Prank phone calls were funny when we were teenagers, and there's, funny slapstick ways you can have a prank phone call and not hurt someone. But this and what they did to this guy, and he handled it well in comparison. And the stage that he's on and the fame that he has, he kind of has to. But as much shade as people want to throw at primetime, I feel like he did a pretty good job with, how his kids behave, at least to when the eyes of the sky are picking him up, because the reports of maybe how he bombed some interviews, it could be true. He might have bombed some things on purpose because there were certain teams he didn't want to go to. But if you were in that same position, could you honestly say you wouldn't do the same thing if there were certain teams you really didn't want to go to, especially the New York Giants of all teams? I'm just saying. And Six says, I'm sure Jeff Ulbrich will have his son Jax pay every cent of that fine. And the fact that his son and his friends self-incriminated accomplices on social media, they exposed themselves. I mean, yes. And things happen. You can have faults, expose yourself for a fault or whatnot, but you can. It shows your character of how you can rebuild yourself and come back from it if that is the case. In this case, you got a lot of rebuilding to do, and your dad's in a really big position in the National Football League, where anybody who has a position with just one of those 32 teams is incredibly lucky, despite how bad the team is structurally as a whole, like any team in New York or any other places. Sorry to my friends out there who are fans of those teams, but it's true. It is what it is. But I'm just interested to see how that kid's going to pay back every cent of that money. They're sick. And when I was reading that, I couldn't help but to laugh, because Jeff Ulbrich seems like the type of dude who's going to come back for every cent, but how is the question. And yes, you remember that Disney movie with Tony Danza, the garbage picking, field goal kicking, Philadelphia mother, father, and phenomenon? You absolutely do, my man. And do you think the NFL needs to reevaluate the draft leaks? It's crazy, the pick 2 minutes before the pick on Twitter, on Discord. And there was a lot of things within the web that people were talking about that too, of how there was like a really, really short delay in knowing that, and vice versa. These picks are already decided several weeks in advance, I feel like, man. That's why when we get to where it's like 2 and 3 weeks out from the draft, it feels like such a long period of time, because the thousands of mock drafts that not just the Kuipers of the world and the McShays and the other people who are now growing into prominence as they're getting older and moving into other things. Like, we got fellow podcasters and people out there throwing their 2 cents like us on Total Football Talk. And, it's wild when you think about the amount of coverage, yet things just seem a little bit too, and I think that they put so much hype and big scheme media wise on Shedeur Sanders going in the top 5 and the top 3 in New York, looking like a place. And what was the Browns going to do with the 2nd overall pick, which they traded to Jacksonville? And we already know about Travis Hunter going there, all the stuff that happened within those moves. There was so much hype on those 2 boys from Colorado that we lost sight of what could truly happen. And they were playing us like the fiddle that we were being played for the 5 rounds of the draft that we were as a result. So, yes, the draft leaks, the phone number, the leaks, all the stuff that happened as a result of this year, they need to tighten some things up, because the NFL as a whole and their process was exposed, especially when a kid gets access to a 10-digit number and affects the livelihood of someone temporarily. Luckily, he comes from a really well taken care of family because of what Prime did during his time in the NFL and MLB. They want for nothing pretty much. But as far as just the experience and the embarrassment and how that felt for a short period of time, still nobody deserves to go through that. Could have been worse. Jax Ulbrich could have cost his father his job. That's a violation of father-son trust. And you are right. There was actually some brewings, discussions, and many podcasts, many shows throughout networks discussing if this could cost the man his job once they found out who actually made the call. But for a very short period of time, we had no idea who it was at first. But, when a face gets exposed, when you post the video of actually doing the deed, it's just a matter of time, because you got IP addresses, myself working in IT. I mean, all that stuff, if you commit crimes out here on the internet, like, it's just a matter of time before they figure out not only your location and who you are, but the time and the amount of time you've invested into what you're doing. So it's tough when you think about people out here and, getting access to your information and what they can do with it. They committed fraud with that prank call. They absolutely did. Jeff Ulbrich can relate to Shedeur Sanders, given that he has a 3rd round draft, 86th pick overall for the 49ers in 2000. Yes, and he dreamed of playing in the NFL and was able to do so. Yes, I believe, wasn't Ulbrich, he played on the defense for, I want to say, like 8 to 10 seasons, something like that. He played. Yeah. So I know exactly what you're talking about, and he should know from his experience getting that call on day 2 that was something that changed his life. And for his son, who, based on how he looked, from getting exposed, he does not have the football type of frame. He's not going to get that type of call. So you could just look at that as like jealousy, and that's how things like this happen. People are prank calling the ones on the other side who genuinely have something that they want, which is the fame or the fun or whatever great lifestyle that the other person might not have, which doesn't really necessarily seem like that could be the case, given the fact that his dad makes 6 figures a year, maybe 7, or maybe got to 7 last year while he was the interim head coach with bonuses for the Jets, even though they didn't win a whole lot. So I don't know how much bonus you really got, if any. But still, you got a few bucks. Your son isn't wanting for much, not in the style of the Sanders family, but still isn't paycheck to paycheck living. Well, You just cost your dad 6 figs. It's time to pay up, pal. Also, the draft needs to start at 6 p.m. or 12 noon. Then announce the pick starting at 8 to make the night go by faster. Give them their moment, but it's too long. 11:40 for the Eagles pick, then interviews after. Yes, because if you actually do the process of the draft, and then it's like kind of like you would think of it in a similarity of like a graduation ceremony. The first 10 picks, we can just roll right through them because you already know what they are because you've had the day to go through everything. Or in a lot of these cases, what seemed like they had the deal done weeks before then. So if you get your ducks in a row early enough, it could be like a graduation ceremony from like 8 to 9. They run through the picks and we see what they did through the day. I really, really like this suggestion. And you guys have been on fire today, but I really, really like that one. I think we need to push that one to the moon and back. Furthermore, the Saints GM Mickey Loomis was surely just as irate about the prank call. Absolutely, even though he didn't draft the kid. Jeff Ulbrich was a linebacker and played 10 seasons. I was close. I said 8 to 10, 2000 to 2009 with the 49ers. Yeah, it's awesome. He definitely made his mark in the NFL. And we have, with this opening drive, as we now have to discuss something that I've been waiting to discuss for a minute. An hour and 46 minutes. We got to talk about the grand champ of the week. Yeah, it's time for the grand champ of the week, dog pick of the week. I miss having Cole here, but I will try to bring enough energy for both of us to deliver the one pick. Because my selection for the grand champ of the week is a man I hyped up earlier, Dresser Wynn of the 0-4, now 1-4 as a result of his play. Memphis Showboats. Dresser Wynn, 17 of 29 completions out of attempts, 235 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, 96.2 QBR, 4 rushes for 11 yards. And what tipped him over the scales, in my opinion, over Jordan Ta'amu of the Defenders was he led the team to the first win of the season and really ended a really bad streak for the Showboats team going back to last year. Big for him against this Stallions team that, 3 straight league championships, trying to get their 4th straight and knock them off for the 2nd time of the year. I had to go with Dresser Wynn of the Memphis Showboats based on his play, his poise, and his leadership throughout this past week's contest. He is my selection for grand champ of the week. And because of where we are at in this show, I'm going to do things in a little bit of a different order today. We're going to go straight from the grand champ into the snowflake of the week because, well, you know what? No. I gotta keep Cole in my spirits with this. We're going to go ahead and do it the regular way. We're going to go from grand champ to 2-minute drill.
Total football talk.
And here for the 2-minute drill, we're going to talk about the 4 teams that are in action in the UFL this weekend. And the 4 teams that we have, there's one game that starts actually here in a little bit. The Arlington Renegades are in St. Louis tonight to take on the Battlehawks. The Battlehawks, who are 3-2 from this past week. And they won the game pretty closely to the Panthers, who are taking on a team that played the Defenders. No, did I not change the actual names of this for the graphic? And I'm finding out in real time. Is that exactly what happened? Let's check this out, ladies and gentlemen. Renegades and Battlehawks are playing today. They're just playing 2 weeks in a row. It's okay. All right. No, the Defenders played them last week. I just got discombobulated. Excuse me. Let's try this again with the UFL Week 6. I was right all along. The Battlehawks are hosting the Renegades tonight for Week 6. There you go. You get some fancy graphic action. I made that earlier in the week for you guys to have tonight. Friday, May the 2nd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox. The St. Louis Battlehawks host the Arlington Renegades tonight. In this game, the 3-2 matchups between the two teams, this one's going to be a good game. I feel like could be potentially the game of the week when you look at the other 4 games in question. Potentially next week, Cole and I could be talking about the fact that this was the game of the week. I feel like the Battlehawks, based on what they were able to do against the Panthers last week and how the Renegades lost their momentum, I think the Battlehawks at home for the second consecutive week get the win and serve the big old fat old steak. To the Arlington Renegades, as that is our Friday night game before we head into our Saturday night game tomorrow. Now, for our Saturday game, we have the now on a streak of 1 win Memphis Showboats, who are 1-4, taking on a team that was dumpster Pelican worthy before the first 2 wins of this season for them. The now 2-3 Houston Roughnecks, a team that, like I said, is now playing longer in the spring than...
Okay.
Talk about him in a little bit, but this team right here, the Houston Roughnecks, 2-3, hosting the Memphis Showboats. Even though the Showboats coming off of their first win of the season, I don't think it was enough momentum for them to get their second consecutive win of the season. I feel like the Houston Roughnecks have a really good chance for the first time in quite some time of having a 500 record. They're going to win their 3rd game of the season. And to many out there, when it comes to if they're a fan of the Memphis Showboats, you're going to feel like this by the end of this game tomorrow afternoon at noon.
You like that? You like that?
You know you do. Old Kirk isn't going to be watching this game at all, but he's pulling for a team that will actually do something pretty motherfathering interesting. Let's take this into the Sunday games. For the Sunday games, we have 2 of them right here. The DC Defenders travel to Michigan to take on the Panthers in Ford Field, the home of the Detroit Lions. The Michigan Panthers hosting again the DC Defenders, who are 4-1 to the Michigan Panthers 3-2 record. Panthers coming off that 32-27 loss to St. Louis in the Battlehawks Stadium themselves, and the Defenders coming off of a big road win themselves. This game is Sunday at 12 noon, same time as the Saturday game, and it's on ESPN2. I think with this one, even though the DC Defenders won this past week, based on the things we saw exposed of them in that close win over the Renegades, and the Panthers almost winning the game that they had this past week as well, the Panthers being at home in Ford Field with the home advantage, find a way to knock the Defenders off to fall to 4-2. The Panthers will improve to 4-2 as they will have the Defenders fall from 4-1 to 4-2. And that is my pick for the first of 2 Sunday games. Now, between that and the second one with the San Antonio Brahmas and the Birmingham Stallions, the other game being at 4:00 p.m. Eastern Time, that one on Fox. This one is not going to be as close as what potentially the Defenders game, the Defenders and Panthers, or the Renegades and Battlehawks game could be. And even the Showboats and the Roughnecks potentially could be close. But based on the way the Brahmas just lost this past week into a team that, you know, like the Roughnecks, 27-3, I don't have a whole lot of high hopes for them going up against the Stallions, who got embarrassed in overtime against the Showboats, losing the game that they did this past week. Again, not a lot of high hopes. I don't think that the San Antonio Brahmas will be coming into this game on the road feeling like this.
Let's get ready to rumble!
However, I do feel like the Stallions will, and the Brahmas will once again look you know it, and I know it.
Acknowledge me.
At least the San Antonio Brahmas, given the fact they are one of 3 teams in the UFL to be in the state of Texas, are not like Tyrone Alizé McDummy in this.
Ain't nobody calling me, texting me, paging me, asking me, are you still involved? Delete! 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 Delete!
You guys want to hear a fucking story?
The story is this. Between the 4 games here, now that we've gone through them all, once again, I have the Battlehawks winning at home on Friday, the Roughnecks winning at home on Saturday, the Panthers winning at home on Sunday, and the Stallions winning at home on Sunday. One of the very rare times I will sit here and tell you that I have all 4 home teams definitively winning in this upcoming week's set of games. With that being said, with the 2-minute drill, with our transitions into many different things, we have another big thing we have to cover, just like the Grand Champ of the Week on these episodes, and that is the Snowflake of the Week.
Total Football Talk.
Yeah, it's that time for the Snowflake of the Week, as we have to talk about our selections, as I have 2 this week. I got an honorable mention, and I've got a main Snowflake of the Week. Brace yourself, as I'm going to even give us some background music for this. Brace yourself, because this is probably one of my favorite Snowflake. This is probably one of my favorite Snowflake of the Week picks ever. And no, I'm not being biased. However, you know it and I know it. You can't go wrong when I have one of these 2 men selected for the Snowflake of the Week. The first Snowflake I'm going to go with is Kellen Mond. I'm sorry, Dante. I'm really sorry. I did not want to pick Kellen Mond as my Snowflake of the Week, but I had to. I really did. Based on what he did at Mississippi and here, you cannot give him the pass because of the things I have labeled within this graphic. 1, 4 of 9 completions out of attempts. Played 2.5 quarters of this game, and you only had 4 of 9 completions, okay, for 35 passing yards, an interception, in a QBR of 15.7 through 2.5 quarters. Certified dumpster Pelican performance. You know it. And I know it as well. That's why he is my selection for Snowflake of the Week. And I even have an honorable mention, one that some of you out there will call.
Okay.
We're going to the game of basketball for our honorable mention of the week, and that is Yo King, LeBron James, a.k.a. La Floppy. Played 1 less day in the 2025 NBA playoffs than the entire Detroit Pistons, and you made the big trade for Luka, and the Detroit Pistons still outlasted you by an entire day in the NBA playoffs. Mr. LeBron James, Mr. La Floppy, Mr.
Okay.
You and your name start with And you are my snowflake of the week. Honorable mention, especially your nickname of
Okay.
Because the fact the Detroit Pistons lasted an extra day than you just completely did this to me.
Got me up.
Welcome to Shenanigery at its finest. Let's see what you guys have here in the comments out here. As Sick Diggy says, Jeff Ulbrich should have his son transfer to enroll in community college and have the boy earn his keep. If dad has to pay $100G, then it should be out of Junior's college fund. I love it. I absolutely love it. And he said to take my time. Hopefully I didn't take too much time. But against San Antonio, yes. Against San Antonio. You ain't hurting my feelings. He played horrible. It is what it is. Actually, let me redo this. Dante deserves better. You ain't hurting my feelings. He played horrible. It is what it is. Maybe Steve Steal Your Girl Smith was in LeBron and Kellen Girls DMs.
What?
Bruh.
Got me up.
Stevie boy.
You can't handle the truth.
Even though he's on the other side saying,
We gotta pause that.
even Sir Charles saying this.
That's terrible.
I mean, is it a total?
Surprise, motherfucker.
I don't think so. Dante with the gems yet again. And it was wild. It absolutely was sick. You guys are both crushing it out here in these streams. Thank you yet again. I do need to take one more commercial break, but when we come back, I still have some things to throw out at you. Still have some good times for this show as we round it on out. Don't go anywhere. I'll see you after this last commercial break for episode 82 of Total Football Talk.
Later, the post game. But coming up next, the 2-minute drill. This is Total Football Talk. Comey Media Incorporated. Creating content magic in the real world.
In a world where chronicles of the past are brought to the streams, whether the content is relatable or completely beyond your realm of life, there is no shadow of a doubt that this show is absolutely full of shenanigans. Get ready for
D. Willie in the evening.
this Sunday at 10:05 p.m. Eastern.
Exclusively on Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, look. Hey, stop playing games. Y'all already know. Go ahead and toss him some Willie Bucks. Ain't nobody playing around. Hey, $sign D Willie 87. Go ahead, hit him up on the Cash App, and go ahead and give him some Willie Bucks. Look at Drew looking stoic, ladies and gentlemen. Stoic on that $10 bill. So go ahead, slide my man over some Willie Bucks, and we good. That's all I'm saying. We good. Around some Willie Bucks.
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Oh, yes. The tradition, the pageantry, the spectacle, the history, the slut. Wait. I gotta rep my brother's stuff right. All my DMV soldiers, stand up! And welcome to the Commander's Gridiron Report. If you want your commanders to be rep right, well, D. Willie is your man. Commander's Gridiron Report. Every Tuesday at 1:05 p.m. Eastern, 12:05 a.m. Central on the Sertoba Media YouTube channel. Music by J. Cool.
Where my soldiers, right side, right side.
Later, the post game. But coming up next, the 2-minute drill. This is Total Football Talk. Comey Media Incorporated. Creating content magic in the real world.
In a world where chronicles of the past are brought to the streams, whether the content is relatable or completely beyond your realm of life, there is no shadow of a doubt that this show is absolutely full of shenanigans. Get ready for
D. Willie in the evening.
This Sunday at 10:05 p.m. Eastern.
Exclusively on Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, look. Hey, stop playing games. Y'all already know. Go ahead and toss him some Willie Bucks. Ain't nobody playing around. Hey, $ D Willie 87. Go ahead and hit him up on the Cash App and go ahead and give him some Willie Bucks. Look at Drew looking stoic, ladies and gentlemen. Stoic on that $10 bill. So go ahead, slide my man over some Willie Bucks, and we good. That's all I'm saying. We good. Slide some Willie Bucks.
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Oh, yes. The tradition, the pageantry, the spectacle, the history, the slut. Wait. I gotta rep my brother's stuff right. All my DMV soldiers, stand up! And welcome to the Commander's Gridiron Report. If you want your commanders to be rep right, well, D. Willie is your man. Commander's Gridiron Report. Every Tuesday at 1:05 p.m. Eastern, 12:05 a.m. Central on the Sertoba Media YouTube channel. Music by J. Cool.
Where my soldiers, right side, commanders. Where my soldiers, left side,
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back as we've got some things we got to talk about. You know, we've talked about many things within this episode, and I wanted to bring a special extra edition for you guys this week. You know, we talked about the one and only Joker. I even put a little extra emphasis on the because that's what it feels like, a little bit of extra emphasis out here in these streams, because sometimes you got to bring a little extra to it. If you don't, you're just not doing it the way that you should, in my opinion. I mean, I could be wrong. But I'm bringing a little special addition to this episode today. Kind of spice it up since I am going solo. It might not always be the most entertaining. I try my best, but I miss Cole. I know you do too. Just doing the best I can. But when it comes to this last part of this show, 2-minute drill we already went through. This is the post game, but I'm going to do something a little bit different with today's post game. Before we go to the post game, it's going to be like half of a post game into the other post game. Kind of like what I've been doing with the opening drive, where you have the opening drive and you have half of it UFL, the other half NFL. Well, with this post game, you're in for a treat. Let's go ahead and take it to that post game.
As long as it's one. Oh, that's great. I love it. I hope it actually is recording. Listening to it.
Now, if any of you have ever watched the content that I've done in the past, you know, outside of Total Football Talk, and seen the In or Out Sports Debate, you know, the debate show where, you know, I have different guests on there each week at the time that I was doing it on a regular basis. Let's just say each episode that came out was a different panelist, usually than what was there the week before. I mean, I was there each week. I was the host. But when you look at what this show is, at some point I wanted to bring it and have like a special edition into here, and I'm going to do it again with Cole. But before I do it with Cole, I want to see what he thinks when I incorporate a transition into another transition, and that being the intro of another into a show of another, with an intro of another that we had at the beginning, as this intro is before the outro in an intro that was before, and I may have just scrambled your eggs upstairs, but it makes sense. Let's do an intro within an intro before the outro of an outro.
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome. The wait is over.
Let's get this thing started.
That's right, a crossover between Total Football Talk and the In or Out Sports Debate, a show that covers the NFL, CFL, and UFL that's been showcased throughout the show. Of the intro that we just watched now is incorporated episode 82 of Total Football Talk within another, so that you can see a transition within another for episode 82 that is on your electronic screen right now. Brought to you by Comey Media and Sertoba Media. I am Drew Willingham here with you, whether you're watching this live or in the replay. Thank you very much, as we are here for the Total Football Talk episode 82 In or Out Sports Debate special edition within the episode. Hopefully that didn't do this.
Got me up.
Let me know how you feel out in the comments, but we're going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to talk about the NFL draft and the players that at least I feel that I'm in or out on based on where they were selected and where they went. We're not going to talk about every single player of the draft, because then we'll be here until midnight, and it's 8 p.m. Eastern time now. And we've already been here for 2 hours and 13 minutes. And, to those of you watching this live or in the replay, thank you very much for taking your time to spend here with me. And hopefully we will have Cole here with us next week, and we could try something like this in the future based on what he thinks, based on how this is reviewed after today with this episode for Busted for Bumping Uglies Unethically, Steve Smith Sr. But for Total Football Talk in episode 82's In or Out Sports Debate special edition, it's going to be around the NFL draft, as I said, for 2025. And one thing I want to highlight, out of all the players that were drafted within the 7 rounds, they involved 246 high schools throughout the United States. 246 different high schools out of all 50 states throughout the NFL here were drafted. So, looking at this, I'm not going to go into the amount, like the high schools' names and who had the most, but I want to look at the states for a minute. And when you think about high school states with the most NFL players drafted in the 2025 per capita, like the population of these areas in the states, like Louisiana with a population of 4,657,000, and plus, they took 10 NFL players out of 4.6 million in population. Georgia, 10.7 million in population, had 22 players. So a state with over 6 million more in population only garnered an extra 12 players in the NFL draft. Montana, a population of just over 1 million. 2 NFL players were drafted in this draft. Alabama, 5 million in population, 9 NFL players drafted. South Carolina, 5.1 million in population, 9 players drafted. Looking at this, and you look at the overall states, when you break them down by high school and state, when you take out the high schools themselves, because it's a lot of high schools, basically you're adding all those high schools together within the state. Texas had the most amount of players drafted. I mean, Texas is huge, come on. But 37 players drafted in the state of Texas. Next, you had Florida at 26. Georgia, where we talked about with the numbers earlier, at 22. They were third, followed by California at 16, and Louisiana tied with Virginia at 10 for the 5th place spot. So out of all that, you have 257 players drafted within the picks in the league, and they all came from 246 different high schools. So that's pretty cool. Out of all 257 picks in the draft, 246 different high schools. That means, within just 11 picks in the draft, that those players went to the same school. Just there was only 11 different opportunities within the 246 other players that were drafted, within the 246 high schools that they played as teammates. That just goes to show how scouting is and how spread out this stuff is, and how not just the fame had Shedeur Sanders slip, but other factors too. There's a lot of scouting that went into it. 246 different high schools and just 11 opportunities of other players being teammates within. I mean, it's pretty wild. Think about it when you go back. Thank you to all of you watching this program right now on Comey Media or Sartoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome. If you have not done so, please click that like button, share, subscribe to whichever platform you're watching this on, and make sure if you haven't subscribed to the other one, if you're watching it on the other one, click that subscribe, because if you're one of our fellow podcasting brothers, I've already done it for you too, my man. So we're already out here in these streams. We talked about Yo King LaFloppy earlier for a brief second, even though this is football. Had to find our time to talk about him. But right now, we're here with the post game doing a very special edition of that, as we're about to discuss the in or out selections for myself and individuals drafted within this year's NFL draft. And I'm going to primarily focus on the first round players. And you look at there we go. And the technology hicked up on me for a second. My page froze up. When you look at the different teams that you have grading throughout this draft, and you start, with teams that have been successful, and you look at how the ones that haven't been as successful throughout, there's going to be a sleeper in this first round that I think people are going to see this year. And people might call me crazy, but I think the Green Bay Packers are going to surprise some people in 2025. Whether they get to the Super Bowl or not, I think the Green Bay Packers make it to the NFC Championship this year, no matter who they face in the wild card game, if it's even that route, or the division round game. They get past the division and get to the NFC Championship game. I feel it. With Matthew Golden coming out of Texas, even though he was selected at 23, this kid definitely deserved to be drafted in the first round because of the talents that he displayed while being the number one option at Texas, helping Quinn Ewers looking as good as he did. And Arch Manning, even though he's going to be a stud at some point when he gets to the NFL, he started that kid's college career off with a bright spark because even they had some highlights together. Matthew Golden is going to help the Green Bay Packers elevate where they couldn't get elevated before because they haven't had that number one connection since you had Rodgers and you had Devontae Adams as the 1-2 punch over there in Green Bay. You haven't had that since then. Jordan Love has had some good moments, but he has not had the connections with the receivers that he should because he hasn't had that type of player. And the Packers haven't drafted anybody this high since the early 2000s. So looking at it for what it is, that's going to be my sleeper team of the first round that I do want to say. Now, even though I've given you all that much, well, Matthew Golden be this year's Rookie of the Year in the NFL. And that's where I have to play the game. This is where we have to start playing the game. Do I think Matthew Golden will be the NFL Rookie of the Year? No, I do not believe he will be the NFL Rookie of the Year. He's going to help the Green Bay Packers win a couple more games. He's going to help them get over the hump a little bit more. They're going to get back to the part where they were in NFC Championship games like Aaron Rodgers and then lose and then probably go home and not get to the Super Bowl. Or they could have enough with him and the other weapons they got with an offensive tackle, Anthony Belton out of NC State in the second round. The wide receiver, Savion Williams from TCU, even though he's a third-round draft pick, he has some nice highlights. You got Barron Sorrell out of Texas, the edge at the fourth-round pick. Colin Oliver out of Oklahoma State with the number 159 pick out of the round 5, and he's an edge too. So back-to-back edge picks with fourth and fifth round. Within the later part, picks within the draft, I'm really not as excited as I am within the first three because you addressed the need you needed at the offensive tackle position in round 2, and you got a secondary receiver to kind of complement with Matthew Golden for the future to go along with what you currently have established, which wasn't much, but you did get some help with Matthew Golden and Savion Williams out of TCU. I really, really like the picks there. Now, let's go to a team that I think made some moves that really are going to impress the league. Offensive tackle Will Campbell selected the number 4 overall pick for the New England Patriots. Round 1, number 4 overall pick. Offensive tackle out of LSU, Will Campbell, selected by the New England Patriots, will be somebody who changes the whole foundation of this team. I am completely in on that. That was one of the great picks of this draft. To be able to get him at 4, you needed an anchor on your offensive line that you have not had in quite some time. This team's been falling apart since the departure of Tom Brady, just after the 2019 season, and, has consistently been on the decline because all of the anchors that they had at those positions, the staples of that team, whether it was offense, defense, or special teams, are gone. In round 2 for this team, took a local kid from this local area, Travion Henderson out of Ohio State. This kid right here is going to be a difference maker at the running back position for the New England Patriots. Let me try that again because I'm going to make clips probably out of this one. This one's a good one to have in or outs for. At round 2, number 38 overall, running back out of Ohio State, Travion Henderson will be a game changer for the New England Patriots. I'm all in on this one for this Total Football Talk edition, episode 82, here, right now, for this In or Out Sports Debate crossover. I'm totally in for Travion Henderson being a game changer at the running back position for the New England Patriots, especially with the number 4 overall pick that they had with offensive tackle Will Campbell out of LSU to protect you and provide some holes for you to run through. I like the Travion Henderson pick out of Ohio State and the fact that he's a local kid here on the East Coast of Virginia near my hometown. I got to give him the A+ there. I'm all in on Travion Henderson from Ohio State, the round 2 pick being a game changer for the New England Patriots. At a round 3 for them, they got wide receiver Kyle Williams out of Washington State. I don't really know too much about Kyle Williams, to be honest, but the fact that they addressed some help at wide receiver in round 3, I think that means that they have a lot of, a good vision potential for him. So him getting selected in round 3 along with center Jared Wilson, which also helps plug a hole right there out of Georgia with the number 95 overall pick. I really like the round 3 picks. The center pick out of Georgia, I like. I'm not really too sure about Kyle Williams out of Washington State, to be honest, but I really like Jared Wilson out of Georgia. Craig Woodson out of California, the safety, defensive tackle, Joshua Farmer out of Florida State. Those two round 4 picks, they address some needs there. But surprisingly, they actually drafted a kicker in round 6, Andres Borregales out of Miami. I'm very surprised to see that they went with a kicker in this draft, but I really like the fact they addressed the needs. If they're going to believe in Drake May and get some weapons around him, you put some staples on the offensive line with the tackle in the center position, and they needed running back help. And Travion Henderson stays healthy at Ohio State. For him to be drafted that high, he needs to be proud of himself, or as any pick in the draft. But for him to do what he did to get to where he's at, coming from a small area, Hopewell, Virginia, and doing what he did, proud of that kid. So for him to get there, that's awesome. New England Patriots are going to be the team that I think that has a pretty big 180 this year. They're not going to go to like the Super Bowl or AFC Championship this year, but the New England Patriots are going to be a team to be paying attention to for the next 5-10 years, I think. Like, not to the level of what they were before, but you're going to be wanting to watch the games. Not necessarily for Drake May, but Travion Henderson, he stays healthy. I think you're going to get 5 really good years at the running back position for him for the Patriots. So, with that being said, I would say the next best team that had a really good draft were the Seattle Seahawks. With the fact that the Seattle Seahawks addressed the need at offensive guard with the first-round pick and the defensive secondary with the safety pick in round 2, along with signing Sam Darnold in the offseason, the Seattle Seahawks are going to the NFC Championship this season. I'm out on that. Nope, I don't think so. You know, they did address some needs that they needed, especially with the tight end spot with Elijah Arroyo out of Miami for round 2. I really like that pick. But then in round 3, you drafted Jalen Milroe. Like, if you're going to draft a quarterback that high in round 3, after signing Sam Darnold to the amount of money that you signed him to, what are you saying, man? Like, you Jalen Milroe, yeah, he's kind of a steal there, but are we going to have a situation in Seattle like we did when Matt Flynn was signed and then Russell Wilson was drafted and then the rookie outshined the newly signed free agent? Could we have that? I'm asking you guys out there in the chat, whether you're watching this live or syndicated in the rebroadcast, what do you think? Do you think that could potentially happen out here in these streams? I'm going to say but it could possibly happen because Russell Wilson was drafted in the 3rd or 4th round, wasn't he? I think it was 3rd round. Looking eerie in comparison to what happened 15 years ago. Riley Mills, the defensive lineman, in round 5, and a wide receiver, Torrey Horton. Torrey Horton is definitely slated out there. A lot of people are saying that he could be a sleeper in this draft based on his number 73 overall prospect, and he was selected at the 166 position. He was limited in 6 games last year due to injury, but based on that, that's the reason why he was drafted so low at 166. But talent-wise, the Seattle Seahawks might have gotten a steal in the round 5 with him in this whole draft. That might go down to be their best pick and best weapon, no matter if it happens to be Darnold or Milroe being your quarterback 3 to 4 years from now as a result of the 2025 draft. Milroe had a lot of praise in college, and that doesn't always transition well into the pros. But something just seems eerie to this. You know, even though it's an underwhelming quarterback class and Cam Ward being the obvious pick at the first overall pick for this team, I mean, for the Tennessee Titans in round 1, I just have an eerie feeling about Jalen Milroe going to the Seattle Seahawks. If I were to start like saying my top 2 favorite teams that had their best drafts throughout, the Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks did, in my opinion, have the best ones because of Torrey Horton and the sleeper pick, and Jalen Milroe and the fact that they were able to get someone like that in round 3. But it just gives me eerie feelings to Russell Wilson situation before in the same team, the same organization. I don't know what they like about that, but Even though this next team, surprisingly only really has Super Bowls lately during the NFL draft, and only drafts well, but then it doesn't translate well into overall play. The Chicago Bears did a pretty good job in their draft. However, I do have some things I want to debate here. With the number one, pick that you have in round one, you did need some help at the tight end position. You needed some help at the wide receiver position. There were some players that were selected in certain spots that deserved to go a little bit sooner. And one of those picks that I would have to say, Matthew Golden, I mean, I talked about him earlier for the Packers, even though they're a little bit higher up on my board as far as the overall team. You kind of let him slip. And even though people really like Colston Loveland, the tight end out of Michigan, he did some good things with Michigan a year ago. And they won the national championship. That was a year ago. Didn't happen this past season. He's your number one pick. I don't feel like tight end was the number one position you needed to address. There's still some other players that you could have drafted that were higher than him. Even though some people, I wouldn't say some people, a lot of people would disagree. A lot of people really like Colston Loveland. I think Tyler Warren would have been a better pick, in my opinion, at that, if you're just going to go ahead and draft that high. So looking at it for what it is, the Bears did a really good job, but when it comes to Colston Loveland being a difference maker at tight end to where he deserves to be the number 10 overall pick, I'm out. Now, we're going to do a couple more teams, then I'm going to get on out of here for my man Ryan McCoffey. Got to talk about his team next. I would say did a pretty decent job in the draft. But Armand Membu from Missouri, offensive tackle. Mason Taylor with the number 42 overall pick. It's the second round pick, but 42 overall at LSU, the tight end. That's a spot where you draft a tight end. Because the tight ends in this draft, like the quarterbacks, they really weren't the types of difference makers that you're going to really need to draft that high. You need to go big in these top picks. If you can't get the best running back, like there were some really good running backs, but really, really good offense and defensive linemen, edge rushers, defensive tackles, whatnot, I would look in there in the first round. Tight end in the second round, I have to give the Jets a really good grade and say that I'd say they give them a B- for what they did in this draft. Go offensive tackle, the tight end, quarterback, wide receiver, and they're all coming from Missouri, LSU, Florida State, Georgia, Alabama, and Miami. They did their homework this year. I think they're stealing away a coach from the Lions. Might have turned the Jets around a little bit to what we thought they could have been this past year with a different quarterback at the helm, but I digress. The Tennessee Titans, I don't think that their best pick in the draft was necessarily Cam Ward at 1. I think Kevin Winston, the safety, who's the third round pick they got, I feel like that's a steal at safety in the third round. That's why if you were to say between Cam Ward and him, Cam Ward is going to be someone that leads the Titans to a Super Bowl appearance like Steve McNair. Did that on purpose, see what you say out here in these streams. But no, he's definitely, in my opinion, not going to lead this current team in 2025 to a Super Bowl. 5 years from now, if you continue to make improvements, you can. But remember who's the owner and the family that's been the owner of this team for quite some time. I digress. I'll wait till Cole's back to talk about this particular team and their faults. But I would say out of their draft picks, their third-round pick supersedes what their first-round pick actually was. Now, a team that drafted really well considering the amount of mistakes they've made in their front office, including what affects their salary cap. I think the Cleveland Browns did a decent job in this draft. You got Mason Graham, the decent defensive tackle, taken with the number 5 overall pick because they moved back with the trade with the Jags. Of course, the Jags trading up to get Travis Hunter out of Colorado, but his teammate was selected, but it wasn't until the Browns' final pick of the draft in round 5 as they moved back up to get that number 144 overall pick in round 5 to take Shedeur Sanders. But they took a quarterback before that, Dylan Gabriel. There's a lot of uncertainties in Cleveland because, Deshaun Watson and his injury. You've got, Joe Flacco there, who's a bridge quarterback to help out for the time being, who's played in that system not too long ago with the Browns and had some relatively decent success leading them to a playoff game when, you've got him to help, whether it's Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders, be the future beyond Deshaun Watson, because Deshaun Watson's either done or if they even bring him back, it's going to be – I don't even see how you bring him back at this point because Flacco could be your bridge for a year or two. And if Shedeur Sanders really has the primetime gene, even though people kind of threw shade at him and let him fall to as far as he did, I got a feeling that Shedeur Sanders – has a really good chance of shining before Deshaun Watson comes back. Let's make that an in or out because I've been making these in or outs on the fly. Shedeur Sanders will cement himself as the number 1 option at quarterback for the Cleveland Browns before Deshaun Watson is 100% healthy enough to even be considered reactivated to the roster. I'm gonna for clip's sakes, because we are live, I'm gonna have to edit stuff out. We're humans. Let me redo that for clip's sake, and then I'll click the button. All right. Shedeur Sanders will solidify himself as the number 1 option at quarterback for the Cleveland Browns before Deshaun Watson can even be reactivated to the starting roster. Absolutely. I think this kid's got a chance to do it. Even though Dylan Gabriel was drafted before Shedeur Sanders, based on talent and what you see, and genetics and what his father brought to the game, he's got a lot more upside than Dylan Gabriel does as a 3rd-round draft pick for this team. I'm sorry. There's a lot of shade thrown at him for his attitude and, for maybe how he bombed some interviews because he didn't want to go to the Giants. You wouldn't want to go to the Giants based on how they've played, even though he kind of trolled everybody out there with those New York Giants-style cleats back during last season of football. Don't you think I forgot about that there, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Primetime Jr., Primetime 2.0, whatever you want to bring yourself as at some point, with the iciness of the chains and having your $1 million renovated draft spot that you had your live stream from. I get it. It sucked to deal with what you had to deal with, but now it's time to put all that stuff away, pack everything up, focus on the playbook and what you can do to be a positive contribution to the team that selected you to be part of it. And hopefully you can. I'm rooting for you because I was rooting for Colorado last year, hoping that they would have a little bit more success and be able to play into the playoff. I thought it would have been interesting to see them even make it into it, but we didn't, get to see that. And hopefully Primetime has success and can prove that he can be a great coach without his sons and maybe have the opportunity to get back together with one of them, if not both. Or even though Travis Hunter is considered a son to him, if there's somehow they can bring all 3 of them together one day, even if they have to leave the current teams that they're with to form somewhere else, some type of super team, like a Tom Brady formed Tampa Bay Buccaneers super team in 2020. But when it comes to that, I am in on that. I feel like he solidifies himself as the number 1 option in Cleveland before Deshaun Watson comes back. What do you think? Let's check out the comments. You guys actually have been rolling in the comments since I last checked. No way! No way! I get to click the button. Yes! You are here. I get to click the button. Vicola is in the mother, father, and house for the first time. That button gets to be clicked. If you could have a button on the screen, like on your computer screen, inside the computer, inside the software collecting dust, that button has collected dust. I have missed clicking that button so much that I'm going to click it one more time again. I'm happy that you are here, my brother, and hopefully you can get up on here again with us soon and talk some sports or even football. Maybe here at some point. I am happy that I got to click that button today. It made my mother fathering day. And we have not only Vicola on the house, which I'll get to your other comments here shortly soon, sir, but I had to address you because I saw you in there. We got to address from where we were to where you got in to now where we're back at. And then we will get back to that. So now, with that being said, we last left off. We were talking about the community college, San Antonio. Oh, LeBron. Yeah, we did that. That was wild. And Dante, yeah, we left off. Dante had said that he couldn't help it. And he couldn't help it about being wild when it came to the Mr. Steve Steal Your Girl comment. That was absolutely amazing and has been a part of greatness out here in the chat, out here in these streams. Dante said that he likes it. The in and out with total football talk on special occasions. I like it. Dante definitely likes it because he has seen the old show. Did 120 episodes of the program. It's a lot of work to put the transitions together. Like I'd normally have rounds and you click the round one and all that stuff and final round. I wasn't going to do all that for this. I was just going to pick different ones and just randomly do it with the in or out so I can make some highlight clips later on with it. But Dante says Jersey has to be up there. Yes. I mean, keep in mind the conference realignment. I mean, I get it. Matthew Golden benefited from Isaiah Bond and being on the field, but Bond threw his career away with that no assault, and it ain't going to fly. Nope. Can't be out there putting your hands on people like that. Henderson does everything well. He really does. And he likes this Atlanta situation. Sam is not a lock. He doesn't have the weapons. He really doesn't. He really doesn't, man. He just doesn't. Yeah, I mean, you're picking up on throwing down. Milrose should have stayed another year. He's one of those because Arch Manning isn't coming out next year. He's going to be 2027. And Jalen Milroe could have been the head of the 2026 class, like Cam Ward was, or like Shedeur. I think Shedeur had one more year of eligibility. I think it was Shiloh that didn't, and Travis that didn't. I'm almost certain. I would bet. I would definitely throw $100 on it right now, easy. I'm pretty sure that Shedeur had one more year of eligibility. He should have been like Milroe and stayed. I think that the top 3 and top 5 hype could have potentially been there had he stayed, but he might have been afraid because of the lack of Travis Hunter that he wouldn't have had the talent around him to keep him a sustainable top 5 pick. And it still all backfired because part of his moves cost him from being what everybody thought he would be in a top 5 pick, to where a lot of us spent a lot of time talking about it. Luckily, not me, because I don't get too hype into the pre-draft stuff, just the results and what we can start to expect after seeing highlights of these players and what they can bring to the teams that they drafted these players to fill the needs of what they needed going into the next season. And Dante said that he thought that the Eagles had a great draft. Yes. And he loves the Bears draft. They have no excuse on offense, and they have all the weapons now. And Baltimore should get the steal of the draft. You can throw us in there, but get Malachi that just field to him. Okay, the Malachi field to him. Okay. Cleveland had a hell of a draft, but it's really a reload. Draft nothing. They drafted will move the needle. Absolutely. You bring the Watson back this year because this is the last year under contract. Well, he's not going to be healthy enough to play this season. He's out for the entirety of the 2025 season, unless I'm wrong about that. I'm pretty sure Deshaun Watson is out for the entirety of 2025. This is going to be a Joe Flacco / potentially Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders at some point thrusted in there if there's too many injuries. But I don't see Deshaun Watson unless he rushes back through the PT to keep himself alive in the NFL, because that's the only way he's going to be able to keep himself alive in the NFL. I just don't see it. I thought the recovery time was a year and a half. And Vicola got to click the button. Yes, sir. Don't sleep on Dylan Gabriel. Okay. I mean, I'm sleeping on him a little bit, but I mean, he did do some things at Oregon. False. Dylan got the game. At least Dylan doesn't throw off his back foot as much. Very true. What are your thoughts on the Commanders returning to D.C.? That was my part 2 of my post game. I'm actually going to save your question for that. And there's something I got to bring back from Dante from earlier as well. Very sorry for being MIA. Lots of craziness for a while. Dude, I get it, man. I totally get it. You don't have to tell me. I have been there, done that, had to take time off. Health, work, life, whatever the case may be. You know, you gotta have all your stuff in a row before you come on back. So I totally get it. And Sick says, I need to get some sleep. I'll catch y'all another time. Sick, appreciate you coming through. Sick, you're all the way in Norway and you're 7 hours ahead. So it's like 3 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning. Yeah, man, get that sleep. But you will definitely be back at some point throughout this weekend if I get a chance to do what I'm thinking about when I tell you guys what I'm thinking at the very end of the show. And Vicola says that he would love that. So I'm talking about getting back on here again or on the stream at some point in general. And Dante says they all had another year. They did. They really did. They Travis, I don't think did, unless he still had the credit from the COVID year, because he still was part of the ones that were playing during that year, and they all got a credit during COVID year for bullshit, that happened. So maybe he did, but Shiloh didn't. Shiloh, remember, is 1 year or two older. He's like a year or two older than Shedeur. So I know that he did not. This was definitely his last year, but it wasn't like he was touted to really go in the draft anyway. So, but Shedeur definitely did. Jalen Milroe did. They could have gone much higher had they stayed another year in college. I get it. And they'd been making more money with the NIL deal had they stayed in college too. So a lot of what ifs people could say one day, but when it comes to that, when it comes to our teams, Dante, I would say if we were to grade your team, you did a B+, overall. I like Campbell out of Alabama with your first round pick. Your safety that you got in round 2 out of Texas definitely was making impacts for their defense over there in Texas and what they did. Ty Robinson out of Nebraska was a really good pick in third round. Mr. Mondon Jr. out of the Georgia pick could be a sleeper. If you look at the highlights of him, your 5th round pick as well. I really like that. But your 2nd round pick out of Texas is probably my favorite pick. His ferocity, he's 5'11" and 186 pounds, but you wouldn't know it. Like, he's got he's just fierce, hits you hard. And this is what you got to do over there at the safety position. I like that pick in round 2. I would say that's probably my favorite pick out of the notes that I have over here to the side. My team, as far as the move, I'll get to the move here soon, but they only had 5 picks in this year's draft. They addressed the offensive tackle position that they needed help with and drafted Josh Connerly Jr. out of Oregon. I honestly don't know too much about him. Didn't do too much work as far as reviewing his tape, and that's my fault leading into this. Just didn't have enough time leading into today's episode. Trey Amos out of Mississippi, the cornerback. I have seen him on tape before, and I like what he's done. I think that's a pretty good pick. It's probably out of the 5 picks my favorite pick. He was a first-team All-SEC honor in his lone season at Ole Miss. Then he entered the pre-draft process as a big corner with great ball production. The questions lingered about his long speed. he ran a 4.43 at the combine, creating first-round buzz in the mock sphere. So, Washington getting him the end of round 2 feels like a potential steal. I would say he's my favorite pick overall. There's some people out there that are saying that Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, the running back that they picked in round 7 out of Arizona, could be the sleeper of the 5. He's probably one of the biggest wild cards in this draft class. I honestly don't know too much about him, but all right. So yeah, I do have it here. He only played in 1 game last year. How is he a sleeper to many people? He played in 1 game due to NCAA eligibility last year for the issues with his eligibility. Played in 1 game. He had 13 carries for 106 yards and a touchdown in the season opener against New Mexico. Yeah, he was kind of touted and he came back. He did play in the East-West Shrine Bowl because he's going to the NFL and got the offensive MVP honors, rushing for 97 yards and 2 touchdowns on 11 carries. Okay, well, I guess I got to give him a little bit of a break there. This is round 7 picks, so you're not really wasting too much, and you guarantee your opportunity of bringing him into camp rather than thinking you can sign him undrafted and another one of the 31 other teams get him. So I'm not mad at it. I think it's a sleeper pick like these other people are saying out here. No, but I do think that the running back position was kind of one of the ones that we needed a little bit more balance at last year. And Jaden Daniels being the number 1 option at running back is not going to be the best when he's the quarterback, because that's literally what he was, scrambling for the yards to extend drives. And you need some help with your running back, and you also got some help on the offensive line with drafting Josh Connerly Jr. out of Oregon. I don't know too much about him, so I don't know if he's going to make that much of an impact. But the pick out of Mississippi, Amos, I have seen him, the cornerback, that secondary you needed help with, and you made a trade last year that didn't really necessarily pay too much dividends, that we've covered highly on this show, that the trade with New Orleans didn't fully come to fruition, at least to the fact of getting a Super Bowl win. You got to the NFC Championship, but it wasn't all on him. And maybe you can build your own future with this young core. I think they're going to need another draft or two and another offseason or two of making moves to really build the true foundation that they want as a team going into that 2030 season when RFK is slated to open. It's going to be some time, but around the time that stadium opens and they're actually getting the opportunity to host a Super Bowl, we could see something of what like Tampa Bay did with winning in their own stadium, except this time the house will be rocking, because as long as nothing, knock on wood, the COVID or anything is going anything like crazy like that, that's the only thing that affected that from not being a crazy Super Bowl as far as the fans, because that's another good place to have one is in Florida. And you build this type of stadium that they're supposed to do in DC, it's 3 whatever billion stadium with the glass roof and the businesses and things and the nightlife to do around it, which FedEx does not provide to you now. It's in the middle of the woods with fantastic parking. You got to deal with that. It's not a good place to go watch football right now. What is slated to come in the RFK site, it's finally got approval, which I am happy for. I'm excited about it. And to answer Vikalaw's question, which I'll pop back up on here shortly, very excited. But we have to wait another 5 years to see it. So I'm glad to see they got something done. Politics were involved, of course, but there's been politics involved with this for several years, and they couldn't get the deal done. This isn't the first time that there's been discussion about moving to the RFK site or building something at the RFK site. But the difference is the new ownership got it done. The new politicians, I guess you could say, got it done. And I'm not even going to be talking politics up here, even go that route, or even say the number 1 ranked position, or even go down that route of having that type of discussion on this show. But it all is connected with this particular move, whether you like it or not. And if you're going to ask me, like Vikalaw said up here, about what are my thoughts on the Commanders returning to DC, I absolutely love it. And I'm absolutely excited for the move. and looking forward to seeing that happen in the very near future. Oh, and you like the corner, you like Trey Amos. Well, I guess you never know, man. Like this happens where, one of these teams drafts another team of the rival that they were looking at, and after their rookie deal, kind of like how you got De'Ami Brown from us, you could either get him via trade or, as a free agent within the next 4 years. Who knows? But if he does what I think he's going to do as a second rounder and as my favorite pick of the 5, I think we could see him be a staple for that secondary of the Commanders. So very good pick at round 2. Not too sure about the first round pick, but we did need to address the offensive tackle position. I'm happy about that. But the fact that we stole one of your players you're looking at brings a tear to my eye into the chest, if you know what I'm saying. And would you go to the Super Bowl since it would be the closest to us? No, I can't afford that, man. I mean, if I could get like a media pass or something, if I could finally, catch a break, and move on up out here, who knows? If it's on that side, if it's paying for it, no. Unless win the lottery, something like that, or strike gold, oil, or something like that, like the Beverly Hillbillies. It's not happening. But I would love to. I will at least say that I will go to a game, regular season game once they're there at some point. You and I might have to, just because since we're in the same state, we're not too far from each other. You and I might need to go watch a Commanders-Eagles game. Just make a drive of it. And, when it's actually the new stadium, we won't have necessarily do the tailgate. You can just check out the places around it. Spend $74 for a burger and fries, man. A couple beers, go check out this game. And, you got the kids be old enough to go check it out by then around these times. Take the kids, man. Or just be like Dude's Day. Go out there, get the homies together, and go check this out. Friendly fun, and it's going to be actually pretty cool. If you've seen, I didn't get the pictures of this in time, but if you see the blueprint or the whatever you want to call it, the design of this new stadium with the glass, it looks sweet. They are going to host a Super Bowl there when this is done. It might take them until 2035 unless they're in the plans of now saying by 2032, if this is up in 2030, they can host. But I think they've already started to set those venues by now. But at least we know there's something good coming to DC. If we're going to say based on the draft, I'll do one more in or out real quick before I address the comments and give my final thoughts before we wrap things on up. If we were to say with the Commanders with this draft, with the 5 picks they had between rounds 1, 2, 4, 6, and 7, and my favorite pick of Amos, these are the players that are going to tip this team over the edge towards Super Bowl contenders this season. I'm out. This guy has a better chance of winning an NBA championship in 2026 than the Washington Commanders.
Okay.
And we know that is not gonna happen.
You can't handle the truth.
That's why when it comes to LaFloppy, that we know him as, he's my mother, father, and honorable mention for Snowflake of the Week, a.k.a. LaFloppy. Yo, LeBron James played one less day in the 2025 playoffs than the entire Detroit Pistons. That's why he is one of my honorable mentions for Snowflake of the Week, and especially the fact that his name starts with an... LaFloppy. Okay. Starts with an L. No cap, man. Come on. All right. Was that... was it pretty good? Let me know.
Acknowledge me.
For chiming in and asking me about that. Dante said the stadiums are down the street from each other, and we staged there for conventions. Okay, that's pretty sweet, man. And it's just FedEx, though, even though it's like a 10-minute drive down the street from the current RFK site. Well, it's going to be the same RFK site, but, the fact that it's that close. But when they built it over there, they did such a terrible job with the surroundings of it when they built that up in the 90s. I still can't get over that, like how they put just such little thought into it. However, when they were designing the stadium, the owner at the time, Jack Kent Cooke, was getting old because he was designing this in the early 90s around the time that they won that third Super Bowl, because they built it and constructed it by 97, which was their first year that they played in there. So you figure it takes them like 5 years now to build a stadium. It was taking them around that time to build it, and sometimes even longer back then. So around the time they won the 91 season, it's January 92, they're either discussing or planning or breaking ground. I don't even know if they broke ground at that point, but they're discussing all this because the lease is about to run out after the 96 season. They have to start at the 97 season playing somewhere else. So by the Super Bowl, they won the third one. They're talking about building something. And around that time, Jack Kent Cooke's getting older. I think he died either that first year it was that 97 season. I don't think he lived to see that first season in 97. And it was called Jack Kent Cooke Stadium in 97 when they started that first year, because he was the owner. And then when Daniel Snyder bought it in 99, it became FedEx, because the partnership of FedEx and the partnership in sponsoring. So when Jack Kent Cooke was designing FedEx around the time they won the third Super Bowl, he was designing Jack Kent Cooke Stadium in 92. They broke ground. It was constructed. 97 season was their first year. When Jack Kent Cooke designed it, and he's getting older. So him as an old man isn't thinking about necessarily, even though they have the paved lots around it for people for the parking, isn't thinking about nightlife or things to do around the stadium at this time, because he's like 80 some years old. He's thinking of the fan experience getting into the place. And even though back in the 60s and 70s tailgating was big, there wasn't really much thought back then as there is now into entertainment surrounding whatever the venue is. And that's why when you look at people now in 2025 getting upset about it, arguably so, because not only is the parking the way it is, it's a bad design. It costs too much for the where you're parking and what you're getting out of it as far as the walk from the parking area. And I know this as a fan going to there, as a fan and working in media at different points in the past as well. So doing that, I can at least tell you from an honest perspective from both sides, they've got to improve all that. And the designs, from what I've seen, they're not too in-depth as far as beyond the overall aerial view of it. But I just hope that the parking decks are reasonable. The fan experience on the outside is just as great as it can be on the inside, and to a great level. And they learn from mistakes of the past with previous ownership, with which they've already proven as building the team within what we see on the field. They're starting to do that in the right direction. So we'll see what happens, but we got time. And even though it's time, 5 years goes by quick. Arizona stole all of your picks, stole my tears as well. And absolutely, as far as going to the game, that's cool, man. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Traffic is going to suck for the games. It always does. So you got to go there early or hang around late and just get out, just hang around, after the game for a little bit, because there's no point in getting in a rush and waiting that long line. So with all that being said, that's the post game. We've talked about a lot in this show. We really have. And, if Cole were here, he would definitely tell you to check us out at our many, many, many social media platforms. You can check me out here if you go to work, Cash App, Instagram, X, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. I'll click it one more time since I was kind of started talking about it late. But I need to get on this flow code, man. I really need to do a better job at the organizational, and whether if it's not a secretary can do it for me. I think this flow code can, because it does it for Cole. Click on this one thing for Cole. You can find him everywhere. So flowcode.com/page/host Cole Johnson for the best way to find him out here. And again, if you want to go to work, just go back about 10 seconds. It's absolutely wild. Just go to work. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joshing you. Today was a fun episode. To hear a little longer than normal, went a little extra, and it was only because of the outpouring in the comments, between Cole's pages and mine. It was really cool to see, the participation between Dante and Sick, and Vicola came in here, Mr. McCoffee came in here. And to those of you that were watching but might not have the ability to comment because you're at work listening or you're driving, you definitely don't be texting and driving. Don't want all that, but you could be at the gym listening for all I know, and not be able to comment. So I get it, but the fact that you are here listening and participating within the show in which way, shape, or form, physically or from afar, greatly appreciate it. Cole should be back next week. Looking forward to having him back, and getting back to normal talking with the 2-person team here. But you guys made it like a 3- and 4-person team today with all the comments. It was great. It was awesome. So it was a really special episode. And when these things happen, it extends them, and it helps it to where I'm having the fun to stay here with you. So as much as I'd like to keep on going, it's getting kind of late, and I got some things to do. But, like Cole says at the end of every episode, like in life, I just about butchered it. But Cole says, in life, like football, keep your head up. You got to keep on playing until the whistle blows. That head up. Even though I'm taking it in a different direction now. He doesn't always say it like this, and I'm throwing extra into it. But in life, like in football, keep your head up. Keep playing until the whistle blows. And as always, for the love of life, football, and everything else, please stay safe out here in these streets, in these streams. You don't have to go home. But you gotta get yourself on up out of here. Busted for Bumping Uglies unethically has come to a close. Leave your comments down below, whether it's live or syndicated, as always. And please stay safe out here in these streets.